Hello out there, everybody. Manny here at Area 503, and I hope that you all have been well since our last video. Today I've got a special guest, Jeff from Strange Recon, and we're going to be doing a little bit of talking about my documentary recently, Who's Lou and Luis Elizondo. Let's see, Jeff, are you ready in the back there? We'll just bring you out real quick. All right, let's do it. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I hope the music's okay out there, everybody. If it's too loud, let me know and I'll drop it down a little bit. It sounds good on my end. Just give a quick shout out to everyone in the chat who's joined us. Aaron McCabe's here, Mr. DB Cooper, Walt Corbin is in the house. Wally, what's up, buddy? Mr. Bubbles, of course, always here. Mr. and Mrs. Bubbles are some of my first fans that I had when I was just a baby channel with 20 subs or something. Steve White's here. CE5 Kent's here. Oh, nice. CE5 from the UK, joining us from the other side of the world.
That's my boy Rob right there.
Nice. Thanks for joining us, Rob. Unidentified S4 was here earlier, and Tony McClure was in the house. Thanks everybody for coming today. Yeah, so Strange Recon, Jeff, I think I ran across you a couple weeks back. Somebody had mentioned your program and your review that you had done. I think it was Zofa said something on like a comment on one of my videos. It was like, oh, you have to see this review that Jeff did. And I went and watched it, and I think I got about 20 minutes into it before I was emailing you saying, hey, let's talk. You brought up so many good points in your review that I just really wanted to talk to you. And you mentioned on a few things that I had kind of talked about before, about Luis Elizondo. So I know it was kind of a month ago that you watched Who's Lou and did that review, but were there any questions that you had that you remember that you wanted to ask me about it?
Well, not that I haven't, got a chance to look too deep into to your conversations afterwards. I apologize. But first off, how long did it take you to make the dang documentary? Because that thing, was a significant amount of time. And I mean, just for my little time in production, it seems like that would take a significant amount of your life and your time.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. You had mentioned to me earlier that you had done some work in television and production, so you understand how much effort goes into those types of research projects. And to answer your question, I've been watching Lou pretty much since day one and grabbing clips from his different live streams where he makes contradictions. But I've been using him in kind of a satirical way with my Tommy the Troll. I've got this little cartoon character that's a face rig and he's a troll, and I troll Lou. I'm like, oh, you're just a hypocrite. You said this here and you said that there. But I've been collecting that footage for years. When I finished my Alien Dance music project, I had really, towards the end of that project, had started really focusing on this one a lot and doing side research real in depth. And that was about 2 or 3 months that I did that. And then I started working on this one. I spent about another 2 months just doing solid research full time, 18 hours a day, every day. Like if I wasn't working or sleeping, I was doing this. I was just on it, and I've got the bags under my eyes to prove it. I've got 5 comp books of notes. I've got 10 gigabytes of clips and other different little there's close to 100 documents that I found. And quite honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg because of everything I had to go through to vet that this was Luis Elizondo, our UFO Lou, these documents that I found. I had to run down every Luis Elizondo in the country that had a property or business. And I did the work. I wasn't able to show that in the film, obviously, but I'm glad that people out there who do research such as yourself recognize that was there, because it wasn't an easy task, and it's been missed by a lot of people. They call it a hit piece, or they say, oh, you just went to Google. And I'm thinking, yeah, on day one I went to Google, and then that was like day 1, minute 1. Like, where do you go from there? You gotta be tenacious, and the research in this wasn't just going to Google. It was going to different sites. It was using a kind of an old school mentality of research where you don't just take your first answer as no and say no. You keep digging and digging and digging and digging. And sometimes, like in the case of Lou's college article that I found about the spring break parking lot, that took me going to the Miami U newspaper archives for their newspaper, college newspaper, for the years that he was there, and searching every one for him. There was no quick, easy way to do that. I had to go and look through them, but I had fun doing it. I was reminded of when I was a kid and I was at the library looking through the old microfiche or whatever they call those, the microfilms, and I would read old newspapers of Portland where I grew up to get a real sense of history, you know. And so it was kind of fun, but it was very, very time consuming. And, you know, the research aspect took several months, and then production took another month or two with some setbacks. I had some huge setbacks right at the end where I'd corrupted project files and I had to rebuild like the last hour of the film from different pieces I had. And I at one point I was just like banging my head on the desk thinking this is never going to come out, you know, or it's going to be another year and nobody's going to care, you know. But I just had to plow through it and just never take no for an answer, whether it was in research or production, and just keep going. And that's what it took to get where it was at. But yeah, it took, you know, I say 6 months is a good round number of full-time work that it took, but really it's been years in the making, you know, as a side project.
Well, I'm surprised that it took that short of time, actually. I'm surprised 6 months. I thought you were going to say, you know, ultimately you were probably putting it together and having people help you. I mean, I've seen productions when I don't have the patience to sit down. I just ramble into a computer and with a caffeine-induced rant, if you will. So I appreciate you doing that for sure, and gave me a lot of content, you know, to talk about on my channel, because it, you know, filled in a lot of clues, and even if I don't have the facts, I definitely have enough anecdotes with the scales of starting to push a certain way, I hope, to the open-minded people. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you know, and that's what it's about. It's about open-minded people. We need, and this field is full of open-minded people. And so I'm surprised that in the recent past, it's become so polarized and, you know, kind of divisive and kind of closed-minded in certain camps, you know. It seems like most people do want both sides of the story. We want all the information so we can make up our own minds. And it's a very small few who need to be spoon-fed things. And, you know, part of what I'm realizing is that it's not just ufology in our country. You know, like we're getting this blended global ufology of people who are connected through things like Twitter and YouTube and, you know, podcasts and things like that. So we're getting all kinds of ufology now. We're getting the people from countries where it's largely been stigmatized, where in ours recently it really hasn't been. The last 20 years things have really moved forward as far as, you know, government reporting, pilot reportings, things like that. People have been talking about it more. You know, if I were to mention UFOs in a bar, people wouldn't look at me like I'm crazy, whereas, you know, 20 years ago they might have, and 40 years ago they definitely would have, you know. So you know, I'm trying to mind the culture gap when I'm dealing with a lot of people online, because I realize that they are coming from a different perspective than a lot of us here in the States have, you know, that this is really a global issue now. And I'm hoping to get a lot of those people on board, but with the full disclosure, not this modified version that has this strange agenda that, you know, everyone's like, what's going on here? Like, why are we got a UFO office that seems to, you know, have links to the defense industry and things like that? Isn't that what ATIP actually was? You know, like, do we need another one of those? It didn't really do much for us, you know. It caused a bunch of ruckus, but you know, yeah. So I hope that we can get more people from the international community on board with this whole open-minded perspective. And I think that some of the reaction we're getting from them is because of, for once, they finally have a little bit of disclosure, and they're feeling like people like me who are questioning Lou are trying to take that away, and that's not the case. I just, you know, I'm trying to bring them into the rest of the group. There's more to disclosure than UFO Twitter and Luis Elizondo. You know, like, come on. We all know that. It's a great place to discuss it, but the field is huge, and it's been going on for years. You know, you mentioned names like Stanton Friedman to some of these people, and they're like, who? And that stuns me. You know, like, if you're quoting Luis Elizondo, but you don't know who Stan Friedman is, you really need to get out of your comfort zone and learn a little bit about this field that we call ufology. You know, there's other names and players who have done big things, including the not so popular Greer nowadays, who had done a lot of work back in the early 2000s for disclosure. You know, there's other people out there. So that's just kind of the point I was making, is that we need to, you know, those people who are open-minded, we need to reach those people. But the ones who are just going to say, no, this is my ufology, well, that's all they can do, you know. And I hope that it's not just a denial technique because they're scared that if Lou goes away, they're not going to get disclosure. I promise them they will still get a better form of it without Luis Elizondo involved, in my opinion. You know, so that's what I'm fighting for.
Yeah, man, that's good points. I do want to say, can I start off before I wanted to say this earlier and I forgot completely, but if people are watching this and they'll go over to my channel or something on YouTube and eventually watch that Who's Lou, review or something like that, or any number one of my angry, crazy morning veteran PTSD rants, just know that I'm not trying to incite any type of violence against anyone out there. There's this bunch of key trigger words I'm seeing all over the internet as of late about inciting things and just labeling things and canceling things. And I noticed that if you say anything, you're suddenly lumped in with everyone who might have said some crazy shit. Oh, excuse my language. I don't know if I can swear here, but some crazy stuff a long time ago. My bad. But I apologize for that. I don't want to start any type of trouble. I'm just noticing these anecdotes. Again, like I said earlier, they stack up to the point where it's almost ridiculous not to then approach the subject in this kind of conspiracy, way. So again, nothing I'm saying should be pushing anyone to go grab their pitchforks and torches and go burn down, like the stuff I'm saying is absolutely ridiculous and it's shameful on both sides. Secondly, I just want to say this real quick. I don't know what the conspiracy is. Okay, so all we're doing is noticing these things and stringing them together as best people can. So ultimately speaking, I still believe the phenomena is very real out there. My life of weirdness, high strangeness, kind of has confirmed it for me, at least, that there is something ridiculously weird out there that is beyond human beings. I still believe that, even though I disbelieve the agenda that's going on and being told by people that are clearly benefiting from your belief about the subject. That's it. Okay. Having said that, can we please continue on the documentary?
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to comment on that real quick, too, because there is a lot of a combative tone around this subject, and I find it interesting because in the past, in ufology, when people have disagreed, it hasn't necessarily been so combative. There might be passion, but there's not these personal attacks per se, or they're isolated, and it doesn't become so hostile. Nobody canceled people over Bob Lazar. They still don't. It's like, well, you either believe the story or you don't. Nobody canceled people over Storm Area 51. I mean, it just wasn't going there. And nowadays it is. And I don't, certain people don't cater to it. People have accused me of doing that. And I'm like, no, I want a conversation with Lou. I'm not trying to fist fight the guy or get into an argument with him. I have some questions I want to ask him, and I want to hear his response, even though I kind of know what he's going to say to my questions anyways. I could tell. I've been watching the guy for years. I could probably do it in his own tone of voice and exactly verbatim what he would say, but it's not a fight that I want. There's somebody else who wants a fight, and it ain't me. Somebody else is trying to make it hostile, and it isn't me. So people need to understand that part of it, or at least look at it from that point of view and say, well, you got one guy who's here's this guy from Portland with 2,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, and he made this documentary, put a half a year of his life into, and all of a sudden this celebrity type is attacking him and telling his viewers to go dox him and do all this other weird stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, this just doesn't add up. If my film was all that much, hurtful to Lou, he could have contacted me and said, hey man, let's talk. Because I'd tried for 2.5 or 3 months almost to get him to talk to me, and he wouldn't. He just dude, he ignores me. He ignored me. I felt like there were sock puppets that got on and said things, and I was like, is one of those Lou? It sounds like it. One of these sock puppets or this weird account was like, hey, you better talk to an attorney before you print anything about Lou. And I'm thinking, that's a weird thing to say. Like, telling me I'm a jerk or that I stink is commonplace, but to threaten a lawsuit, like, who does that? Besides, I just had to respond and say, well, I'm trying to get his side of the story here, like, talk to me or I got to put it out. And he didn't, and I did, and that's where we're at today. I dropped it because he wouldn't talk to me. He still won't talk to me, other than, God, the guy cussed me out on Twitter the other night. It was crazy, man. He told me to go, how would you like a hot cup of F you? And I was like, whoa, dude, like, all I asked is if I was part of your family, because he said something about the UAP family. He's like, oh, I'm so proud that, I've got this family. And I said, Lou, even the naysayers and haters, as you call us, or critics, as we call them, like, are we part of your family? And the whole reason I said that is because there was a solidarity thing There was a ufology solidarity project that had gone on last week where people were saying, hey, we need to come together for disclosure. We need to not fight. We need to settle our differences and discuss things in rational ways. And I had submitted a piece to this project and said, yeah, I believe in this. We need to come together. And at the end of it, there wasn't any submission from Lou. I mean, I guess he was too busy to actually, put something in, but they did a little homage piece to Lou, Chris Mellon, Hal Puthoff, Jim Semivan, and they said, hey, we recognize that these people have done some things for disclosure. And it really, I had to bite my lip. I was like, ooh, but then I said, you know what? Honestly, we're all part of the same family, good and bad. The same big family. We're ufology. I don't trust Lou, or I think his agendas, he's got his own motivations, but I do feel like he's still part of the family. He's kind of like that jerk-off cousin you got who's at every family function, or whatever, and you're just like, oh, we love you anyways, come here, like whatever. But it feels like that feeling is not reciprocated, like to him, I feel like from his point of view, I feel like people like me and sometimes you who are questioning are the enemy and are treated like an enemy combatant. And that's not what we're doing. Like I'm trying to have a civil conversation and outline facts, and it's being taken to a hostile level. But yeah, there's my own little ramble. Let me say thank you to my Flock real quick for the $1.49 super sticker. I appreciate you, Flock, for all of your support on Twitter and everything. Like that's amazing. What were you going to say there, Jeff?
I just want to finish that off with this. In modern day, there's a lot of like standing with people. I see a lot of posts like that, and I stand with so and so. Therefore, I cannot even entertain the idea of listening to what you have to say about it, and that has obviously ended the conversation right there. So yeah. I don't know where you go from this point, but I'll just keep hanging out and being crabby.
Well, we're all in it together, and it's a ride that we're not really in control of, so it's just kind of like life. We're just hang on and watch and do what we can when we can, which in some cases is just sitting down and talking about things and getting it on the record, and other times is engaging critics and things like that. So look, Russ says here, he says, I'm just sad that Lou ignores me. I kind of am sad. I already said that when I made my documentary. That I spent a half of a year of my life trying to make a documentary about Luis Elizondo, and he couldn't spend an hour sitting down talking to me to give me his side of the story. You're right. That is sad. Why would he do that?
I mean, you're not the only one. Luis Elizondo used to talk to my former co-host through text message and phone calls all the time about what show to do and go on. And I would literally be sending Lou emails or Twitter tweets and being like, dude, come on our show. And he did.
And then you get ignored, but you see him on a live stream the next night that's got 12 people watching and 200 subs. And you're like, what? What's going on here? Like, and it's not about subs, but it is about, if you'll notice, it's about people. And I said it in the movie. I said, Lou, if you ask him for an interview, he will not respond to you, but he'll go out and investigate you first to feel out what side of his story you're on. And if you're somebody who's like, yay Lou, or if he feels like he'll just be able to say his one-sided story and not be questioned, he'll go on there. But if it's not, forget about it. If he even catches a whiff of someone who's going to call him out on things, he won't do it. In fact, on Twitter the other night was the first time he's ever engaged me directly, and it was downright vile. He's insinuated about me, and he's talked plenty in the last month about me, but he won't ever say it by name. It's always this weird they that includes me, probably like Rich Goofon, Stephen Greer, and probably a bunch of other people who have questioned him over the years. And he's like, oh, they do this, and I'm like, that's weird. We could say that about you, Mellon, and everybody else in DeLong and just make this whole weird they and start just saying everything. But we're not doing that. I haven't done it. I've tried to go through like in the movie. I'm going to pull this up here too. Let me share this one here. I'm going to pull up. Oops, what did I do there? I think I had it shared and I pulled it away. I'm a StreamYard novice, man. I just can't.
I need to get into it because I don't like Zoom, and I've been using it. I just been, just using it to rant into the mic. But I want to get into something better.
I do like StreamYard because you can do things like this. Obviously, once I share this screen, we can't play the music anymore. But for people who aren't familiar, I'd be surprised that everyone should have seen this at some point. This is Lou Elizondo's official webpage at luiselizondoofficial.com. It's copyrighted 2020 by Luis Elizondo. That's his official webpage. And this is the base of Who's Lou, because I basically went down this whole webpage line by line, read it, and then went out and researched all these subjects and then told you guys what I found about them. There is some interesting, stuff on here. I mean, he talks about his patents and stuff. It's real. They're. Look, I'm an inventor holding multiple patents in marine transportation, and this is right here from 2020, and this is one of the things that really caught my eye from the get go were these nautical patents. I was just like, where the heck did these come from? Where does a guy who's
Well, it reminds me of the only statement I got from, because after I had this guy on the show named Mr. X, if you recall, John Greenwald, the Black Vault, did a little article and summary about this counterintelligence agent that was kind of mistreated, if you will, by Lou and Tom during the filming of Unearth. What's the name of it?
Yeah,
what was the name of the show?
Unidentified, and that was
yeah.
where they filmed him in the hotel without his knowledge and all that.
Yeah, there was other stuff that went along with that, but I met that guy, and I had him on the show a couple times, but I spoke to him multiple times. But after I had him on, I had like freaking 20 counterintelligence agents reach out to me, and they all gave me roughly the same credentials. And the funniest part was that basically the same sentiment from the people that claimed to know him and the ones that really like left the mark was the ones that said that guy's a snake. He's always got something going on. And then when I watch a documentary, and I'm just like looking at all the other things that were going on while he was doing this project, be it the security for the program or the director of the program, and I just was like, holy cow, they kind of were on to it. They were saying something relatively accurate.
So those were people from the intelligence community that basically were saying that Lou had a reputation as kind of always being on the job, so to speak, or having some kind of plan, or
some. The sentiment was that guy is that he always had something going on for himself, kind of like just ways to make money outside of the military. People that are smart enough to take advantage of like creating businesses and things like that, smart enough to, get your taxes taken care of and very quickly efficient loopholes that they've set up for people that can start a business.
Yeah.
And so
opportunist, right?
And when you're in the military, when you're working like as a contractor and you get to know these people in your units, you tend to find out like, holy cow, like you don't just do the job, you also have like these 8 other things going on. That's awesome. Good for you. Like, so that's a lot of, I heard that and okay, now I know what they mean. When I saw your film, I thought you stayed very busy.
He did, and I asked that. I'm like, how did he have the time to do all this? Because he's got his official assignment, which we'll talk about later, I believe was in biodefense. I don't think he was officially assigned to ATIP at all. I think that was a volunteer position. So we've got his official assignment, whatever that might have been. Then we've got ATIP, that he's volunteering at, and he's also on the side trying to do these businesses and these patents. And you're like, when does the guy sleep? Like, does he got a couple of clones? And then you see all the extracurricular activities too, like the stuff in Florida and things like that. And you're like, again, where does he have time to do all this when he's working at the Pentagon and still go over to Florida and meet a lady and, start things there and a business down in 2018 and all this other stuff. You're just like, wow, maybe there's a couple of Lou's out there, like he's got a clone or something. Yeah.
It certainly just does. It just leads to the idea that, or continue down, keeps you driving towards that idea that he does have things going on, and this subject is just maybe one of those things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do kind of feel that way, and I've said it on a few live streams that I feel like his motivation was kind of, there was multiple motivations for him to do what he did, but one was that he was in at 22, he was at 22 years, so he had another 18 to go to get full retirement. He was probably looking at being a desk agent that whole time. And, that's something I wanted to kind of talk with you about later too, here is to go over how we kind of, the pay grades and things like that, and where we think he might have been at on that scale. But he was doing all that stuff at the Pentagon, and then it's like he probably didn't want to just be there for the, that's kind of a thankless job in a lot of ways. It really is. So this is high profile. He had the whole hero, celebrity element, the money element, of course, but then also the, hey, I'm going to be someone. The scary part to me is all of these people that are, like you said earlier, we don't know what the conspiracy is, but we know that there's something going on and there's a bunch of players. And all of the players have their own personal motivations, but they're also furthering the group as a whole. So it's hard to just point at one person and say, they're doing it for this, they're doing it for that. Because nobody's just doing it for the agenda. They're all getting a slice of the pie out of it somehow and some other stuff that they want. So that was a good point to bring up too, though.
Part of me, if I was to put my finger on something I feel as of right now, part of me feels like this entire thing is just a way to basically cover up the idea that there's this massive defect in our battlefield awareness when it comes to the Navy. I mean, it just seems like everything is rooted back to the idea that that very primitive technology has broken its way through the colossus that is the U.S. Navy's battlefield awareness, and they're called UAP, as in birds, balloons, and drones. And they happen so often, and the techno signatures are gathered so often that the Navy reports them all the time, and we don't get the information for like 2 years after it comes out, and then you find out in the Navy logbook it says right there UAS drone. Like they knew it was an unmanned aerial system drone. The Navy saw it with their own eyes, but because it took a year, 2 years to come out, everyone's like, it's consciousness, it's this, it's freaking shape-shifting angels. And so I don't know what to think when we've got someone claiming that he's the official on that, and these are great examples of these UAP incursions that he's talking about, when in fact we know they're Chinese and Russian. And Tyler Rogaway and his crew over at the War Zone put together a great series of articles. I suggest people go over there and read them. The War Zone, of course, he might have his bias, but the story looks clear that the Navy had a serious problem with UAP incursions long before Lou was on the scene for this, long before the official 2017 New York Times series of articles and stuff like that. So I don't know. It seems like it's just to cover the fact that they've spent billions on a project that has some major flaws. And a balloon beat a freaking $300 billion project. Sorry. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, like I've wondered about that too. Like the Nimitz encounter in particular. I just found out recently that our battle group was out there for 2 weeks, I think. Trying to find this thing, and then or maybe a week trying to find it, and then a week once they did tracking it and doing different engagements with it. And I have to really be suspect about that because, in 2017, there was a Mode Z stealth intruder over Oregon that was visually spotted by airline pilots and tracked for 40 something minutes, that flew down around Northern California and then did an abrupt U-turn and came right back up north and disappeared over Portland, where I live. And there were F-15s, I think, that were scrambled out of Bigfoot Squadron up in Washington within 20 minutes of the engagement to go find this thing and either escort it down or to destroy it. So I have to question why here we are in 2004 over the Nimitz in our own backyard right off of San Diego, which is if you were Russian and Chinese and you come there, you got to be freaking crazy. It'd be like Boeing trying to fly a test plane over the Kremlin. Why would you do that? Northeast Siberia. It's like they're back. Why would you come to our backyard to test that instead of testing it on your own stuff first, or even taking it to our allies who have some of our declassified lower version techs, flying it there? And if it did, why didn't the cause or the close-in weapon systems, or what I mean? Like, why didn't some of that stuff just destroy this thing and take it down? I feel like all of these kind of points lead to the Nimitz being one of our pieces of top secret tech, and the carrier group didn't know it. But the SAP group who was flying it out there did, and maybe the carrier group was told, hey, don't shoot this thing down. Get every bit of sensor data you can on it. We're going to collect it, and it'll go to where you don't know, but we all know it goes back to the people who are, you know what I mean? Like maybe, the same kind of test.
Sorry to interrupt you, but maybe they couldn't shoot it down.
Definitely.
Not just because it's of a technology propulsion system that can be too fast, but because in 2004, a man named, I think it's Richard Gardner, invented a series of holograms. They were used for everything from training to part functioning on aircraft design to eventually what now is pretty well known as plasma blobs that are in the shape of aircraft that you can pump sound waves into, and you can't target them. They show up in your visual sight, and they're white. And of course, they show up on your system, different spectrums you're looking at. And so it's pretty. To me, the patent came out in 2005 for some of those holographic devices, but the Chinese are releasing videos right now bragging about what their fighters can do, of this laser array under their jets that shoot out different jets. Like it literally makes like ghost jets come out from underneath it to show that you can't target this thing even if you wanted to. And that's very similar to a lot of techs we had, even for counter ICBM and stuff like that. It's just a new age version of it. And of course, it's downright mind blowing. Some of the stuff they're doing with it, even like hostage rescue. Can you imagine Jesus floating through your window and it says, "Hello, this is Officer so-and-so from the Los Angeles Police Department.
Yes.
Please put down the weapon." Like they're doing that. You can see that live on video. So it's not like these things were out and about that time. And, you know, can we answer this part of the conspiracy with the Nimitz event if we're going to talk about it? There's still like half the crew that talks about the Air Force showed up and confiscated things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've never seen that in the military before, though I'm not super, you know, knowledgeable about high-end, you know, intelligence things, but I couldn't imagine a time where the Air Force is like, "Those are ours, goodbye."
Yeah, to go into the CIC and yank the hard drives, like that's got to be something big. You know, that's it's out of the ordinary. But then you've got other things like Alex Dietrich, who says she was never had to sign an NDA or told not to talk about it. You know what I mean? Thanks, Brain. I appreciate the $5 super chat, man.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so you've got one, you know, like on one side it sounds like they were really locking down that story, and on the other side it seems like they didn't care, or maybe both are true. Maybe they were out there trying to do that and they just messed up, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people who had access to that information. But as far as Dietrich not having to sign an NDA, you'd think if they were trying to cover it up, they would have made all those pilots who saw it sign NDAs, Fravor, all of them. You know, but it doesn't seem like they did. And the deck crew, too. They'd be like, no, anyone who's even close to this thing. I think Gary Voorhees was down in the radar, or he was somewhere on the boat, but he was, you know, doing something like that. They would have made him, too, sign a non-disclosure agreement because he would have had access to radar data. You know, like anyone who came even close to this thing. And from what I understand, the actual footage was passed around the boat on cell phones and things quite a bit. So, like, everybody had it. Why wouldn't they? And if they confiscated it, they probably said, "All right, guys, if you've got this crap, delete it, because if it gets off this boat, we're going to be mad." You know, like there's probably some kind of unofficial cleanup that went on too. But you know that some of that got out. That's probably how it made it onto YouTube in 2005 or 7 or whenever the footage was originally leaked and then taken down. Yeah,
that is taken very seriously. Even back in then, I was in the military in 2004, and I'll tell you, like, you know, you don't get like. That's the easiest place to confiscate phones. You're on a boat in the ocean. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna get away with it? So I don't know why. You know, that seems like, you know, that the same thing would happen to an infantry squad if you saw something, you know, and you took your phones out. You know. So
yeah, and flash drives and all that. I mean, we had all that stuff back then, and people were talking. I mean, you know how boats are. You can't keep a rumor. If 2 people know it, it's not a secret. You know, like it might not be officially acknowledged. You know, and I'm not talking about top secret stuff. I'm talking about rumored stuff. You know, like not the crazy stuff. But on the boats, you can't keep that stuff down. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. So you said you were in the military in the early 2000s, right? 2000. What's your military?
Yeah, I was in the military for a short time. I did some time in the infantry, led a team and a squad in combat in Iraq, and then while I was in the army, I was working on a program called Land Warrior, and it's now called Net Warrior. And so I had to basically, my entire early career in the army or for the military in general was literally working with a corporation that's like interwoven with a infantry unit, and then we took that tech and we, you know, proved that concept in combat real time, and it worked well. You know, sometimes it was like, basically, you ever seen the Ghost Recon guy that flips down the eyepiece and stuff like that? That entire system that Tom Clancy was writing about is the Land Warrior system. You can see it on the DARPA webpage. It's the heads-up display and all that stuff. You can shoot around corners, even though that part of the system sucked. But you can, you know, there's all types of stuff. Basically, the best part of it was you can be in the jungle and someone will send you a picture of who you're looking for. You know, and you can pretty much get to where you're going using a series of, you know, satellite images, drones, and all that stuff. It runs. So you've got
like your heads-up display, and you can communicate information back and forth. And you were part of like a field test for this type of unit or this type of device.
Yeah, I was in 4th Battalion, 9th Infantry. It was a unit that hadn't been stood up for a long time, since like Vietnam, pretty much. But since the 90s. But yeah, we would just basically a unit full of privates. We had one NCO, which was the command sergeant major, because the unit was just being set up, so it was like crazy. My time in the army was great when I first got there because we were wild, but and we're in the infantry, so it was us versus the MPs basically every night. But it was great though, because then in comes Augustine Consulting and General Dynamics and all these different groups, and they come in, bring all this awesome technology, and then because we're going down the route of this cool tech gear, bringing it to combat, we were everyone was trying to sell their stuff to our unit, and I get asked to a board as a private, and I think I'm like going there to get promoted or something, but in fact I go there and I get selected to be the sergeant major's driver for like 6 months. I learned a lot because Phil Pitch was a legend among Rangers. He was like, one of the most legendary, like actual hardcore dudes on the planet, like commandos. When you think commando, you know what I mean? So he taught me a lot, but I got to see a lot of crazy stuff, and I got to see how it worked, and I got to see how positions like PEO soldier and like the daddy warbucks types of figures in the army or military are, where they have these awesome systems in play and they make a ton of money from it, and controlling the narrative of how it's going to be used. And so I saw a lot of equivalencies when I was listening to your work you put together on Lou, the things Lou has said in general over the last 4 or 5 years now. And and I could go on and talk about my military career, of course, but I then left and did some tech work, quality assurance and stuff like that, and beating tech up to get it out there. And yeah,
well, that's interesting though, because you've got some, like you said, you have some interaction with military contractors, and you understand how that business works. And I'm glad, because a lot of people I talk to, they don't necessarily understand it. I'll say things like no bid contracts, and they're like, huh? I'm like, have you, like we've got to go into that whole gig at some point.
Well, I might not be super familiar with all the major terms because I was just a hired contractor, and then after the military whatnot. But I will tell you that the things you were saying about contractors moving around was pretty spot on in the way that lifestyle can be, and just in general what it's like to go for a contract in the military.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of contractors. As we know, this official statistics for our involvement in Afghanistan, we lost just as many contractors, if not more, I think, than soldiers over there as that went. And that's just the actual KIA, not the wounded. So we know that and I bring that point up, and it's a sad point. And let me say this too: thank you for your service, man. That you served your country, and I have a profound respect for veterans. I know a lot of people were upset in my film when I used the term "stolen valor" with in regards to Elizondo. And honestly, I've said a few times that was not the right term to use. I've learned since then, after talking to people who have experience, there was another way I should have approached that. And I've already made a public apology to Lou for that. I'm like, well, I maybe should have used a different term. Embellished. Is there something else here? But that was something I needed to, I guess, experience before I learned that. I had to talk to people who said, hey, man, that's not cool.
Stolen valor work. I mean, it's all over the place, though. So don't really. I mean, at some point, some could draw some lines between those that being maybe even slightly correct in a certain degree. I mean, if Lou says he was a grunt, I mean, I would like for him to prove that. I hope it's true. So I don't, because my gut feeling tells me that he just said that because he thought it was cool. I said that on that Who's Lou review. I not that I'm some sort of like protector of the infantry's reputation or whatever. I'm critical sometimes, but I will say, if someone goes around saying they're a grunt on multiple shows, that if we heard that in the infantry, we'd be like, effing liar, dude. You're not in the infantry. A grunt is that, but that's what that means. To everyone in the Army and the Marines, if someone's like, I'm a grunt, they would not be confused for a second what that meant. So, he said that, and I just thought, okay, well then I hope someone can prove that Luis Elizondo was in the infantry one day, because that's kind of a big claim. It's not like some huge right, but it is something.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about his military experience for a moment, because you just touched on a good point. Let me add this one back in so people can say. I'm just going to pop us both out, but they can still hear us. So Lou says, during my short tenure in the U.S. Army, I had the honor and privilege to serve in various assignments. As a counterintelligence special agent, I was assigned to the Republic of Korea in South Korea, and later throughout America's Southwest. As a young agent, I conducted counter-espionage investigations, provided technology protection and advanced aerospace systems and platforms, and supported the U.S.-Russia treaties Open Skies and START II, and conducted routine security background investigations. So,
Sounds
just
badass.
Yeah, it does. But we know that Lou is only officially in the Army for, I think it was 3 years, right? And so at some point he's talking about, being a grunt. So I'm wondering where the grunt would have been in this, because he's talking about he's a counterintelligence agent in South Korea.
Mhm.
Now, am I correct in assuming that all of these are positions he would hold with the army? These are all,
Oh, I'm sure.
um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. I'm
but
sure.
not, so these are army positions, not defense intelligence agency positions. This
I mean,
opens
ultimately speaking, it looks like that could be done in relatively short time. Yeah. I mean,
in a 3 year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't verify it, but I have spoken to enough counterintelligence agents now about Lou that I feel like he hasn't said anything wildly off about his counterintelligence activity. That's as far as I can tell. But again, it's so compartmentalized around Meade that even like people that work alongside of you don't even know what you're doing sometimes. I mean,
Hmm.
I've heard that so many times. Like, I didn't even know my partner was doing this. Like, you both had that job of conducting background checks and doing what the CI does and stuff like that, and securing and keeping the force safe. But at the same time, you might be like, this guy was telling me, you can literally be walking down the hall and you get called into an office and you're suddenly assigned to something that's so far off what you were just doing on Wednesday that it's not like the infantry where we're going to train and do the same thing we're going to do. But yeah, anyways, but yeah.
Yeah, so he could have done all that and actually been doing multiples of these things at the same time. There's no reason he couldn't be working on Open Skies and also, handling some Korean information, right? I assume that's true.
I
Uh,
think it's possible. Yeah, definitely.
Siegel says that's a DIA badge on his waist there, and this is when he says he was assigned to Korea because this is the Korea one JPEG, and yeah, you kind of see a baby face kind of Lou there. What a strapping young dude! Look at him, man. Look at that mug. Yeah,
He
like
looks like, I'll tell you, he looks more like every CID agent I've ever seen in my entire life, which is the criminal investigation guys out of, like, MPs turned federal agents that I've ever seen. I don't know. I only met two counterintelligence my entire time in the infantry. So
yeah,
yeah.
there is a kind of Elliot Ness look there. I'm not sure. Like maybe he thinks that we're all Capones, his critics. But yeah, I don't know. Does that look like a DIA badge to you?
I can't be the official for that one for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know the difference. I know that I was I've I don't even want to say, I've had relationships with people that have had military federal service backgrounds, and the badge looks like one and the same. I can't tell the difference.
Hmm. So he would have still, if this was Korea, he would have still been in the army at that point, according to his narrative here, and that makes sense too because
Sounds
I think,
reasonable.
yeah, I think it was 98. I think is when he left the army, and that's when he would have got pulled into the special activities program here, and this is what this is where I have a hard time or a weird point is that his summary statement says that he left the army in 98. But here he's saying he was recruited into a special activities program within the army. And so why
Okay.
would yeah, if you've got something to tell me about that please because I'm stumped by that.
From my side and my view of things, I know how it works from the combat side, like I was saying on the Who's Lou review there. So I could only say how I've seen it from the combat side. And I will say that there are, and you can read it in books out there now too. They've been out for years that there are things called like green badgers and blue badgers, and now there's even like a white badger type, like the Edward Snowden type would be like a white badger, and or maybe I don't know how that it's been moved around. Anyways, these dudes are plucked out of the military for a job, beyond the ranks of the Department of the Army, if you will, and onto like bigger things like the CIA. There are literally people that are just such badass soldiers. They find themselves now working for the secret army, which is for the CIA. That's people just have no concept of that. Then the best military in the world, believe it or not, is not the United States Army ready to trample everyone. The best military in the world is the CIA. They literally have the freaking best jets, the best helicopter pilots, the
Mm-hmm.
best fighters,
Mm-hmm.
and so that they're called green badgers. Lou sounds like he's a green badger of a type. You get plucked out and you go off and do a job for the intelligence community. I mean, he's always said, even till this day, he's a consultant for the intelligence community, which, whatever that may be. That could mean so many things.
It sure could. It could be the legitimate Central Intelligence Agency, or it could be the private sector intelligence community that works on their behalf away from FOIA. You know, it could be anything like that.
Friggin' Lockheed Martin employs like more counterintelligence agents, I think, than any other freaking manufacturer out there. They literally have like an army of counterintelligence agents. I mean, you can go right to their website and apply for a job there.
Yeah, it's crazy. LockheedMartinJobs.com. I used it a lot in my research of Elizondo. And yeah, they do have all kinds of jobs from the engineering on to security and other stuff, you know, that require different levels of clearance, each one
Oh
of
yeah,
them.
and Lou's
Yeah.
right. I mean, Lou is literally he would have been like the man, like that would he would have had the best resume for a job like that, and it would have been easy for him too. You know, it probably would have been easy to do a counter CI
Well,
job
yeah,
for.
and he's been working with these companies. I assume the whole time. You know, like you said, it's hard. It's hard to be in the military and not have some. You know, if you're in that role and not have some kind of interaction with these groups, and that'll actually touch on something that I want to talk about a little bit later too, which is the kind of 2008 to 2010 time frame too. You know, we'll come back to that in a minute, but so. So it's your belief that if he was pulled into some kind of special activities program, like he says here, that he would probably then have been discharged from the regular army, and that's why his papers show that he left the army in '98. Is that sounding right?
I would say that sounds about right, and it would do it in a very vanishing type of way that you wouldn't understand where the paperwork went. You wouldn't be processing through the, here's all my gear, here's my paperwork through the way you exfil out of the army normally. I knew a guy one time that he made it into a very like the best unit in the entire world, and I could say that with absolute confidence. And he literally disappeared off the map like the day he got hired into the unit, like literally off the map. I saw him like 4 years later. Big old bushy beard, picks me up for lunch. It was insane. He went right through the gate on security with no problem at all. And so yeah, these
Wow.
guys just disappear with no trail. Literally, they'll just be hired into something in it. And I don't even know how these programs are linked. I've had a lot of these CI guys telling me that some of these programs are so linked with the defense industry. It's like it's so hard to tell what your title would even be, or who you would even be really working for. I don't even know how it works. Are they one and the same? I don't. I really don't
Right.
know.
So the reason I ask is because here's Lou's resignation letter to the Secretary of Defense. It looks like, right? Yeah.
Mattis, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I
He
think it
worked
was.
directly under. He worked that pro thing was under Mattis, I believe. Technically.
Yes. So he says, for 22 years, I've been blessed to learn and work with world class leadership. You certainly being amongst the best. But again, what does that mean? Is he an independent contractor for those 22 years? Is he like that has a Pentagon liaison, you know, or that has a temporary station there? I mean, what is his role? Is he actually? I'm asking because it seems like from this he's saying he has a 22-year military career, government employment, and if he did, then that's completely different than leaving. I mean, that shows that he was recruited into some other official program, but we just don't know what that is, right? Is that where we're at? Because I just don't get it. I don't understand why his
I
summary shows 3 years if he was working there for 22. You know?
Yeah, I sound like I'm almost taking like people's side here or something. No, but from my perspective, and I'm glad you had me on. I guess if you truly want to know, I would say from my perspective, looking at that right there, that sounds like everyone I've ever known that does go back and forth, jumping from a the military to a contracting position that is supporting something, and it goes on. I mean, they're all interwoven nowadays. And so if someone says I've got 22 years of service and they have 3 years of service in their army career, I would ultimately say that every job he held ever since then is in support of ultimately protecting the force, if you will, which the force would be our military or our larger infrastructure security in the nation. It ultimately, as well, of course, I'm sure you can assume this, that the CI community out of Meade in the army has like a direct route, oftentimes, not just into the private sector where the real money is being made, which is also something I'd like to talk to you about Luke going on the news and being called a whistleblower and like a crusader. It makes no sense. But literally, yeah, they have a direct route in finding work in the intelligence community after, which is different. One is counterintelligence, one is intelligence. So I know there oftentimes is like direct path. So he's probably talking about every job, whatever he had, is in support of.
Right. So that it is some sort of official job. I mean, whether it was at the DIA, it clearly wasn't at the Army because we know that he was discharged in '98. But
Yeah.
so he did have some kind of official position, but again, so it's sounding more like that was official and not a contractor position than is what you're saying. And I appreciate you kind of saying that because you're not
It could have
taking
been
sides.
both
You're
though.
just, you're
It could
telling
have
us
been.
your side. So
Oh, I'm
good.
sorry to interrupt you, but it could have been both though. Just to say that because a lot of guys kind of see it the same nowadays.
Okay.
Because it's so privatized. Like it's so that's what I mean. Like literally in the army, everything from the trash getting picked up to who makes our freaking rockets is completely outsourced to someone else. So oftentimes when people in the intelligence community hold a job that also kind of is in support of, I mean, everything from surveillance to background checks to securing
Mm-hmm.
digital servers of information. So yeah, I would just say he altogether. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's good. We need that clarification. I do because I don't understand a lot of these programs and what these, like, because I don't have the experience with them. But I'm glad that you clarified that. And it is interesting, and I could see how the two could, blend together. You've got IC stuff or you've got contractor stuff. Do I think that our contractors that are over there getting, killed to defend our country are a part of our defense? Yes, absolutely. I'm saddened that people have to do, that contractors have to go over there. I think our military should be the one, who's like, boom, let's do this and let's do it with minimal casualties. But if we have to, if we have to fight, but
it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to digest it. But just to real quick that there isn't a military on the planet that has ever sustained itself in a nation ever that's ever existed that it never hired mercenaries in some sort of degree to fight on behalf. And I'll say this, and I don't know if this is 100% true based on what was going on, and I was in a complete blaze of a gunfight, but there was one time that contractors, technically speaking, saved my ass, even though a week later they almost killed us by mistake because it's the Wild West. But like literally at one time they have a major use over there. And I know guys that are still doing it today, and they're honest to God good guys, and they're doing it because it's good money, and they still feel like they're patriotic. They're still working for their nation in a different way.
sure. And they are, and it is a support of the nation. And I understand what you say about the contractor bit. One of the earliest examples I like to use is the old privateers in the pirate days that would be hired by a certain crown to attack their enemies. And it's like go ahead and pirate anyone as long as it ain't our guys. You have a writ. And so that type of using others to do your dirty work, so to speak, or your wet work or whatever has been around for a long time. I'm glad you brought that up. And this is just a current day manifestation of that same old thing, and I get that that's how it works. I touched on it with a video I did that was about the missing money that Rumsfeld announced in 2001 from the Pentagon budget. Yeah, and maybe I'll play that later for people if we're on a roll. It's kind of a rude film, or a little short, but we're coming up on an hour here. I think I'm going to put some music on for everyone so we can take a quick break real fast. And I need to grab another glass of water if you need to grab anything. We'll be back in just a minute here. I'm talking with Jeff at Strange Recon. His channel link is in the description right under this video. So go down there and give his YouTube channel a watch. And Jeff, if you get me you said you have a podcast too or something, an audio cast. If you get me that link, I'll put it in the description for everyone after the show as well, so they can find you on your other platforms that you're on. Yeah, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back in about 4 or 5 minutes. All right.
Cool.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us from the earlier, I've got Jeff with Strange Recon. I'm going to bring Jeff back out. Thanks again for coming, everybody. We're talking about Who's Lou and Luis Elizondo today. It looks like there's some latecomers to the chat. Barry, oh no, Barry was here. Steve, I saw that Alien Girl was here. Jackie O, The Urban Way. Thanks everybody for coming by, and if you're catching us on the replay, thanks for watching us and wanting to listen to what we have to say. So, Jeff, what we were talking about, a few different things about Elizondo's military career and whatnot. Let's see, let me bring that other screen back up. I'm going to kill the music here.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm harping on him too bad at all, but I will say that, like I was trying to say earlier, that we were, that whole, the way that he was pitched as this crusader that would leave a government job or a government contract job for another larger gamble on investment was just the biggest, most ridiculous, out of context. Like when people leave the military for a job like that, it's like everyone in the military is jealous. You know what I mean? You're jealous of that job. There's like a contractor's creed that's out there. It's mostly for, it's for combat contractors and stuff like that, but like one of the parts of it is like I can quit whenever I want, and I can make like $700+ a day. That was, they wrote it back when contractors that were getting paid $20,000 a year suddenly getting paid $180,000 a year, like overnight, by joining Blackwater or something. And so
yeah, that's a good point that you made in your review, is that, generally this is like the golden egg for your golden goose for people when you go to get out of the military, is that you've got some kind of dream connection with a military contractor that you can get into, whether it's as one of those contractors who then goes back out to fight, or one of those contractors who's working on something scientific, like we've got Hal Putoff doing over at TTSA, or a contractor who's doing something else intelligence-wise, like it appears that Elizondo's doing. And I don't think he hides that. I think he tells everyone, my work now is synergistic to what I was doing before. He doesn't try to put, he doesn't even try to hide it. He just tells people. I don't understand why more people don't get riled up about it. But yeah, so
he can stay. To add to that, he can literally stay right about it. Luke can be telling the truth, technically speaking, if you consider the context of how he's delivering it about UAP forever. He literally will never be wrong, technically, because he's just using the initialism UAP.
It's called an unprovable. It's where you can't prove, or I forget what the term is. You can't prove or disprove it. So it's really just kind of a non-argument. It's kind of like there's no way to verify his story or to disprove it, right?
And people just, they can't quite grasp it. Then I think that contrast or context is actually being manipulated in some sort of grand way without sounding too crazy about it. But literally, like, you can't even make people understand what context means in 2020. Like, if you say the bad word, or you go against the bad thing, or you do this, it's like, they're bad, I marginalize them, now it's okay that they'll all agree, let's destroy them. It's like, they don't even, it's just context is completely gone. So, the context of how that whole entire story came out based on his career and your investigation, it's just completely the opposite of what, whatever. Anyways, what was going on there?
Yeah, that's something that's missing in a lot of discussions nowadays. You're right. People just hear one buzzword and are rallied to action without really digging in to see, like you said, the context. And that's in our everyday lives. So I'm not surprised it's in ufology now too. And the marginalization. It's labeling people as one thing or another so you can discount them. Just like
it makes it easy.
Yeah, exactly. They've been doing that to us for years. They did it when I was a kid. It was the commies that were trying to kill us all. And I'm like, that was interesting too. I wanted to mention that too. Going back up to Lou's previous experience where he said he worked on these Open Skies Start 2. I'm not sure what Open Skies is, although I can guess. I know what Start 2 was our agreement with Russia to monitor each other's missile development and things like that, where they'd put cameras in each other's production facilities and then gave access to the enemy to spy on certain elements of production and nuclear weapon and missile production and things like that. And this actually explains why, if you look in some of Lou's interviews, up behind him in his house, he's got a Russian atlas that's in Cyrillic, actually. And I was like, what is he doing with that, man? What does he do with the book with Cyrillic? But it was probably a reference piece for, or a memento from this day in his, service when he was doing that type of work. I don't think the guy actually reads Cyrillic, but maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he has that connection.
I read a book that was like literally half the book was about that time and the people that worked on those Russian spy things. It was almost
Oh
comical.
wow.
Like literally, like people like men on the other side of the door of the female agent that works there and stuff. Like it was just the most comical crap that you ever
Wow.
saw. And
Like spy versus spy type
that's
stuff,
100% what it was. And to protect the force, you had to know what they were doing all the time. So you literally had like cameras and stuff everywhere. You leave your house every day and come back with your door broken in every single day. And like they'd openly talk about it. They literally openly talk about it. They were like perverted too, but they were like literally the Russians and the Americans were doing crazy shit to one another back then. Like,
Don't they? And it was almost to me like it almost seemed comedic because it was like an industry that was self-perpetuating itself on fear that
oh
when
yeah,
when all the dust settles, we could have just wiped it all out, saved all that money and heartache and headache, and who knows the games that these guys play, like if in the real world, if anybody's watched that movie Spy Game with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt that's in it, it was early 2000s. That
great
kind
movie.
of yeah, it tells you how little some of these people value actual human life, in the game of chess that they're playing and how they can excuse just about anything in the greater good, So I always am suspect when I hear that greater good term. I'm just like, you're going to need to prove to me that this is in my greater good,
Oh
And
yeah,
if
the greater good. It's one of the most frightening terms I've ever heard. For God's sakes.
isn't it? They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But yeah, I found that interesting, that Russian connection there. And the more that I dig into Elizondo, the more of his pieces of his past and his real story I tend to kind of put together based upon other things that I find. And that was kind of something I wanted to talk with you about. We were going to move ahead in the time frame here to like, let's say the 2004, right? That's when you said you were in the infantry and stuff, right? And so just to kind of take people back, we're 2004, we're post 9/11. America's in the grips of that terror, but also Amerithrax was a big thing. And that leads into what we were talking about that I want to talk about here in a little bit, the 2008 and 9 time period. But there was a big biodefense push in the country, in the
Oh yeah.
military during that time frame. And I found several articles from that time period that reference that I'll be putting in a video or something later. But I
I
just
have
want
my
to give
anthrax scar right here.
yeah. Okay, man. So you remember that time frame and you lived through it, and that's great because I want to get your perspective on that. Because from what I've read, there was a big push in our defense sector to boost the biodefense industry, and that, of course, led to contractors doing the same thing, and that'll become relevant later when we're talking about Lou for a couple of reasons. But what are your recollection about that? What's your recollection about that time frame and what you were going through at that time? Did you have anything to do with that? You said you got your scars, so you got vaccinated for something.
My anthrax scar, yeah. Yeah, no, I just, if you want me to paint a picture of what 2004 looked like for the military, I want you to think of it like this. More money than you can ever perceive is being thrown at every goddamn program, department, experimental technology, contract unit. Halliburton's charging freaking, 3 plates for every 1 plate of food they sell. There was money flying out every goddamn hole orifice that the Defense Department had. Literally, like, just like gone crazy. And there were jobs that you wouldn't believe, and the need for counterintelligence was more important than ever, because when you start putting and implementing these technologies on the battlefield, some of them I saw up close and personal, they were awesome. You have to know what the enemy knows about what you have and what the enemy has to counter that, and yada yada yada, on and on. So it was a wild time for the military. It went from being poor under the Clintons to, holy God, look at all the money we got right now. And everyone had new weapons, new shiny uniforms, and all types of crazy stuff. That's what the military looked like then.
Yeah, and we've seen the defense spending to prove that. There was the money that we talked about earlier that Rumsfeld said was missing for the special access projects in HUD was about $2.3 trillion in 2001. Recent accounts show that that's over 23 something trillion dollars now, roughly $1 trillion a year. So that's on top of the on paper spending is what I'm saying. This is another $1 trillion that went to the DoD to basically level foreign countries, and then to HUD to rebuild them, all under the special access programs, and most likely all going back to the same companies when all the dust settles,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So that's a huge amount of money. And it wasn't just, oh, let me say this. Lou actually gave a really good account of counter intelligence the other day, and he said, excuse me, it was pretty much just like you said. He said it's knowing what pieces not only that your enemy has on the board and what they can do, but knowing what they know about your pieces that you have on the board and what they can do. So that's a really good summary of that. It's kind of like the mental thought exercises of playing chess with someone, and you're running through five different moves, and and you're playing different scenarios, and you're replaying different things to say, okay, if I do this and he does that, then I'm going to do this, and then and that's really how these people think. And a lot of it at the end of the day is philosophical, right? And doesn't really, I mean, it makes sense in principle, but they do some interesting things in the name of national security. We've all seen that. But
well, yeah, no, you're right.
go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to say that at the time too, that was the, I mean, believe it or not, the Chinese were sending spies to actually go into military bases in all different types of crazy ways, like crazy. So the counterintelligence community became one of the most vital tools that ever existed at that time, right around that time period, 2004. And also that I was going to say, when I was talking about 2004, all those companies that created these novel innovations in technology, like the Garner holograms I was talking about, and all these other little things that you wouldn't even think of that are real. You know what I mean? That just, why would they, I can't believe that's out there. All these things have found, needed a parent company when the war ended, if you will, or when the money went away, if you will. Suddenly, no one cared about the war anymore. So all of them were purchased and picked up by Big Mama Lockheed and Raytheon and all these companies going around and swept these organizations up if their contracts were up or if their program wasn't shelled in the military. So it's a convoluted mess of what, as long as you, like you're saying, as long as you control the narrative from that side, I just feel like it's kind of one of the most important things that we can note what's happening right now. And that's seems what's going on.
And it is. I agree with you there. Shane says, but Manny, according to BTO UFO proof, Who's Lou isn't a real documentary. Now, what is a real documentary? That's a good question, and thank you for the $4.99 super chat, Shane. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, if Who's Lou isn't a documentary, I don't know what is. I've got over 100 or close to 100 documents in it.
The Tinder swindler.
Yeah, I don't get it. What is a real documentary? Sitting down with Lou and putting a camera in his face. We've got hundreds of hours of that on YouTube. And we've heard all those stories. So, yeah, and what you were saying about Lockheed, that makes perfect sense because they've already got the connections with the government to utilize those types of companies if they were to pick them up, and they've already got the clearances, they've already got the infrastructure. It's just assimilation. It's the same thing every big business does, gobble up a little guy when they see the opportunity. And I did look up Lockheed Martin on the corporation wiki, and they have over 650 sub companies that they own on paper, and those are only the official ones that they own on paper. And what people need to understand about Lockheed is that all that money rolls upstream into Lockheed, and then it dumps right into the Lockheed Martin Trust, which is owned by the CEO of Lockheed Martin and the board members and the stocks and all that. And if you go and look at the Lockheed Martin SEC filings, what you'll see is about 30 pages of insider trading reports where these guys are trading legally. It's insider information that the company has because they're making these little posts. So there's tons of money there. It all rolls upstream. It all goes through a certain amount of people, and it goes into that trust. And from there, we can only assume where it goes. Probably a lot of it goes back into PACs and private other trusts and things like that. But it's a crap ton of taxpayer money that, as somebody said in the chat, is spent without oversight or permission, and really has the reek of stealing and corruption. But it's not that simple. It really is. Some of these programs are necessary. Some of these programs have legitimate uses. But some of them are definitely exploited for people's personal gain, which is something I'm going to be talking about in the near future a lot more and more, are what I call these techno scams that they're doing to get these SAP projects, and they're just basically garbage. It's just a way to get taxpayer money for junk.
Man, I've literally seen with my own eyes these daddy warbucks types that live a lifestyle and they don't want it to end and that contract to end, and seeing all types of ways that you're out in the field and you got a guy that rolls up in like this huge like Hummer thing. It's like with rims. He's got an iced out watch, and the guy's like this lieutenant colonel. Like he does not have the money to be doing this lifestyle, and yet it just there's so many little insider things. But I just to jump forward with you, because I see in front of you got this the Pentagon ATIP up here.
Yeah.
Can I just say this real quick, because this is something that I say on my show all the time, and oftentimes people forget it. I don't say it like this, but Lou and ATIP brought forth the 5 observables, which I will clap for. That is an interesting take on it. And if you expected Lou to be the expert, the man, the government's UAP alien hunter UFO guy that was pitched for 5 years, right? Has it been 5 years? Pretty much.
Yeah, close to 5. Yeah.
That he wouldn't sway too off the topic of the slides there and what he actually did. It's like if you were to hire a fighter pilot as a lecturer, and the person started talking about life after death and stuff like that in the middle. It's like what? It's like and I believe in a lot of this paranormal, metaphysical stuff. But when you are being quoted as the guy and you say that whatever, anyways. But Lou has the 5 observables, and I thank him for that. Strange Recon and myself have noticed 5 things that you should observe from people you might consider charlatans in ufology. One being they take an investment to provide a new age of propulsion or engine, but they don't deliver it. If you're old enough, you'll remember that a series of cars were invented throughout the 70s and 80s, and they never came around, and people just ran with the money. So that's one. That's my first observable. If someone promised you that they're going to build one of these things, these UFOs, but they never deliver, that's one. Okay, employed consultant or for the intelligence community or former CI. If you know ufology, you know the long duo yin-yang relationship we have with the counterintelligence community. So that's my second one. If the third one is claims there is no secret test craft that could possibly be an alternative explanation, for these things people are seeing in the sky on TV, that's a problem, because that goes against the first one, because at one point he was in an organization that claimed they were going to build one of these things. Remember? Invest in TTSA, and we're going to build one of these UFOs because we've got the guy from Lockheed, we got the guy from the Air Force, we got the guy from the Pentagon, we got Jim Semivan, and Hal Puthoff. We've got the whole team. So how can you not have the ability to have these aircraft if at one point you were selling them? And the third would be openly stating you want to destroy ufology.
Yeah.
Oh, that's number 3. Oh, I'm sorry, that's number 4. Openly state you want to destroy ufology. People that have been studying this field for 60 years almost had a heart attack. Like, what do you know? A CI finally got us. Like, okay. And of course, a series, number 5, using bad evidence or bad context for presenting evidence under the guise that you're this huge authority and my rank and whatever says this is real. And if that constantly happens and what you're using as evidence is bullshit or bad information or anything like that at all. Oh, my dog's barking. Jeepers crow here. Sorry, guys. Anyways, right. Yeah. It means pretty much what you think. It means if someone's using bad information all the time, they're no longer the government's UAP guy. They are just a ufologist. They're just out doing a lecture circuit.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, sorry, I had to state that because I keep seeing ATIP in my over and over again. I couldn't get it out of my head.
Yeah, that's good though. And this is kind of the time frame I wanted to talk about here. Was this ATIP, which was, according to Lou, the 2008 to 2012, I think, time frame. But before we do that, I wanted to look at this other thing here real quick. It's the government pay scale for 2017, which is the year that Lou quit. And one of the things I wanted to point out here is that according to the GS pay scale, you've got to have a bachelor's or master's degree, I think it is. There you go. With the bachelor's degree, you can only go up to a GS8, which is the degree that Lou has. He's got a bachelor's degree from University of Miami in 95 or 6, I think. And so I was kind of curious about this because we talk about the financial elements before, and I know that there are ways, because it's not a blank pay scale, because there's like there's steps to each one of these pay scales, right? Like it goes like GS8, and then you can get the step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I'm trying to figure out, without a bachelor's degree, do you think it's possible that he could have gone above a GS8 with only a BD bachelor's? You're muted. You're muted there, Jeff.
I think that speaks more to the unit's overall, strength and their purpose and what people thought was going to be coming out of it. Because if they have someone who was once the basically the security guy side of it is now leading the show, it kind of makes it seem like the effort wasn't really considered a serious ordeal or what it was being portrayed as an aliens. I don't think
Instead of a scientist or a high-ranking official, it was basically their security, their red shirt, who was doing it.
Lou didn't get any of those cases himself. He didn't. As far as I can tell, everything Lou got was vetted because he came there as the program was already in operation. So It's not like he was out there investigating those things. So I don't doubt that someone who probably wouldn't necessarily have the stats to hold this position or another position like that all the time maybe find themselves in that position. It's just, it doesn't matter though, because all you ever hear from anyone is those highlighted, headline words, 3-star equivalent to a 3-star general. But that's not really what no one looks at this guy and says that dude's a 3-star general. Like that's not what's happening in the walking around the Pentagon. That's not.
Mm-hmm. I found that interesting because on one of the live streams over at Tom Fessler's show, they were making fun of Susan Go and her rank as a full bird colonel. And I'm thinking, isn't full bird colonel like right under a 1-star general? Like, why is this guy making fun of her rank and clowning on her? I understand that that's a pool of largely bureaucrats, but they're high level bureaucrats and assistants, like those are high level people.
It's weird how that works. Yeah, it's like instead of it being a private, like in a regular unit, it's like almost a full bird colonel is doing a secretary job for a general at that point. It's crazy how high ranking it. But still, I understand what you're saying for sure. No, it is. But that whole thing about her, what do we know about that after all this time? That she said no, and he said yes, I was, and that's after it's been how long now? We don't know anything else about that case. John Greenwald just posted something about it, but it really doesn't. It's not enlightening.
The way I understand it is that there's really 2 ATIPs, and I've said this a few times. There's like an official ATIP on paper, what the government mandated it to do, what it was on paper to do, what it was paid to do, and then there's what these guys did with it off the books. And you got Elizondo and Mellon, and before his passing, the late Reed, who were basically saying this is what ATIP was, and then you've got the Pentagon saying no, it's this. This is what it was. So we got to differentiate that too. And I know I saw you shake your head. I know you know what I'm talking about. There's you got to kind of go real ATIP, actual ATIP. We got to differentiate the two, and it gets confusing.
Yeah, and of course there's so much on top. There's so much that weights that all down. I don't the idea is that there was a UAP problem, and that was long before it was attached to anything alien, or whatever you want to call what UFOs once they thought they were. There was a long UAP problem.
Always. There's always been one since the 40s, right? That we know of.
But the UAP problem I'm referring to isn't actually UAPs as an aliens. That there's always been a UAP problem with the Navy and having to figure that out. I'm hearing this crazy loud noise and I don't know what it is. Do you hear that? Sorry. Anyways, but there's devices out right now that the sailors wear on the deck of these ships when these UAS systems come around. These UAPs, these Chinese drones, and I'm not trying to constantly say that all of this is human, but what that specifically, like the UAP problem that ATIP was sought out to do, had nothing to do with Skinwalker and these other things the other programs are doing. They literally have. Okay, if for everyone who's just hearing this for the first time and knows what I'm talking about, or doesn't know what I'm talking about, just imagine there's a giant visible, snow globe looking thing over around a battle cruiser or something, and they have this battlefield awareness, and what sometimes you need to gain techno signatures from that, so you got to send in balloons and birds and all types of stuff, and they were that's what I said in the beginning of the show about the Colossus, that the Goliath was beat by David, because they figured out a way to get past this huge mega costly system with things as primitive as birds and balloons and all that. So yes, there was probably some really unexplained things happening, but Lou is not the guy to go after UFOs and aliens or whatever it was. Lou was the guy that went after how to figure out what the F the Chinese know, now that we figured out it's the Chinese with these damn balloons, these drones, these experimental aircraft, these birds, literally like shoving a Raspberry Pi up a bird's butt and then putting it onto work is as effective, is more effective than you would believe. It sends the signal back, hey, here's as far as I can get before we read that the Navy can see this coming in. There's a lot, so, and that's why I really lean towards, yes, Lou probably is being truthful in the sense that he just created, remember, Lou always has something going on. He just created a new
Mhm.
career for himself based on the stuff that Hal Puthoff claims is real, and all that. I mean,
Yep.
I mean,
And where did
Lou's
Hal
not
get it
lying.
from? Because
Yeah.
Hal's not telling an original story either. Half of what Hal's been saying since the 80s just goes to some degree all the way back to like MJ12 in a way. Like it's the same kind of story about these weird, psychic scrying and telepathy. And it, to some degree, what people are calling CE5 nowadays, channeling aliens and communicating telepathically and things like that. So, we've seen all these stories in ufology for years. This is just a new, just like, Elizondo and stuff. It's just a new version of the same old stuff.
Yeah.
It's yeah, same crap, different pile.
I've always, I've always liked that part of ufology, the conspiracy and real weird stuff of the contractors who have worked in the science areas of this. But I got to tell you, like, did anyone else see Mr. Puthoff say on that interview with Weinstein and that guy Jesse there? I can't think it's Jesse, but he said that they figured out how to beat the stock market using psychic powers. And Weinstein said, there's a difference between saying that you can do that, telling me how, and then pulling up in your Bugatti and flying to a private island. If Hal Puthoff is the guy you're relying on, he's saying that he could literally beat the stock market with psychic powers right now, but yet he needs funding that is being labeled as demonic. This is the flying. God, I want to lose it.
Well, and so Hal's a good one to bring up there because Hal is back of the house over at TTSA and using a lot of their money over there for his projects. But they got close to 60 million, I think, in stock sales before commissions and whatever, so it's a little bit less, 52, I think, and change. But they got a significant amount of money. And if Hal could have just thought his way to some big stock boom, why didn't he do that instead of taking money from investors that they'll probably never see back?
Maybe it's because they were punished for trying to take advantage of the phenomena. I don't know. I like I said, I don't know. I just feel like it's so contradicting. It's like, and also the whole like the quote that I've heard so many times that from Lou and others that you couldn't get funding and that's why you don't see anything about UFOs or alien tech or anything like that at all or extraterrestrial on the documents because you couldn't get funding for this ATIP because it's allegedly demonic technology that people in the government or the Air Force, whatever the government, that is saying they don't want to look into it. Having said that, let's go back to the statement I just made about what he said. I mean, it's why even bother? Was Lou there when that sentiment came around? Like a unit has a motto. Like my unit at one point was always ready, and whatever it was. And then, I don't remember what the hell my first one was, the Cav one. Anyways, but when they got there, it was like, don't ask for money. Like what it was. I don't know what it was. It just seems like it's just you can't claim to can be a billionaire and also need to beg for money and only have such a small amount of it.
Right, and say that you have psychic powers, but not see a documentary coming that's a hit piece. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. A hit piece, the trigger word. You don't need to watch it. Don't watch it, people. It's called a hit piece.
Yeah,
no, that's the joke. Watch
it. Yeah, let's go back to this time frame because I want to talk about this 2008 time, and that's where there was a big push. I again in the biodefense field. And the reason that I bring it up is because I found, and I know people are going to love this, it's a Reddit post, but I'm going to drop it in the chat so people can read along if they want to. And this is a really interesting post, and it's a long post, so I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm just going to kind of summarize it, but if you want to go read it, you can. But basically, this person had made a post saying that they remembered a biodefense talk that Elizondo had given in the 2008 to 10 time frame. And it was about biodefense in America. And this is what I found interesting, misinformation during the Cold War. And I found that it was interesting that he was a specialist on misinformation. But the story that this person told on Reddit, they basically got flamed off of Reddit by all of those hardcore Lou fans and had to repost this because the mod took it down and basically said, hey, if you can't find this video that Lou's in, you're garbage and you're a liar. And the guy's like, I looked, I couldn't find it. However, there's an interesting exchange here where Luis Elizondo was on Jimmy Church Fade to Black radio, and this person messages Christina Gomez, who's one of Lou's moderators, and says, hey, could you ask Lou if he ever gave a defense speech about biodefense a few years back talking about Amerithrax? I have this vague memory that I've seen him before, and I think it was there. The answer from Christina Gomez is yes, she asked Lou, and he says yes, he did that talk. So that's when I've said many times where I say I feel like Lou was officially assigned elsewhere and he was volunteering at ATIP. This is where I think that he was assigned. He was in the biodefense sector of the military that was interacting with our contractors, and that makes perfect sense with his education in immunology, virology, and chemistry or biology, whatever it was. He's got the college education for this, and it would make sense if the military was going to be pulling people into those programs to interact with our private biodefense industry. They would have needed somebody like Lou to liaise with them,
Oh,
having clearance and the education, right?
no, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't, I obviously don't know officially, but
No, we're
it
speculating. Yeah.
yes, it would make perfect sense that when any field that is attached to the Defense Department is increased in any manner of way, the logistics of the information, the security, and all that stuff, the high side server where they keep all that stuff is it has to have a disciplined standard operating procedure and where that all done. And I have no doubt that Luis Elizondo is an expert in that. I mean, and you know, I just feel ridiculous for saying this after an hour and 20 whatever we're in here, but you know, being another service member, you know, nothing against Lou's career or anything like that at all, other than the things I've put forth and asked and stuff like that. So the patriotic side of him, I don't doubt it. And I am mature enough to recognize that, hey, there's possibly things that they might want to keep out of the public's hands. I mean, God forbid there is a way to put a propulsion system in a very small compartmentalized thing and launch it across the ocean as fast as you want for fun and go start a war with another country by mistake because you blew apart a city. You know, we're talking like, where's those major breakthroughs in technology and things like that, and I don't know. So yeah, I can understand what he might be doing from that side. I just don't like it. I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the narrative being completely in control of someone who has had a consistency of using information that, like, of just like a guy that's like, I think tomorrow I'm going to be a ufologist, and you pretty much you can. You can go find a lecture circuit right now to go start talking on. If you really get a good resume going and a website on it. And
well,
like
Lou
that.
had no problems doing that. He went right to the top, man. They just gobbled him right up, and I understand why. He's very charismatic. He tells a good story, but the more you look at it, the more you see the repetition and the acting and the same statements, and then you watch the narrative shift every election cycle every 2 years, and you're just like, oh boy, I see where this is going, you know. And now here we are, like you said, 4 or 5 years later, and we're, you know, all of a sudden this is a defense industry movement, not a disclosure movement. And I'm just scratching my head thinking, God, it's the defense industry that had the disclosure to give to us. It wasn't the brass. I mean, they, you know, if they had anything, they gave it to the industries in the 40s or the 80s or whenever, and they leaked it both times, maybe, I don't know. But,
Yeah,
you know, like, from there, it goes out of our FOIA reach and it goes into these SAP programs and things like that where we can't get access to it ever. You know, and that's,
Yeah.
I kind of laugh every time I see a poll on Twitter. They're like, you know, is Congress going to force the Air Force to know what they know about UAP and UFO? I'm like, they already have. Like, the Air Force doesn't know much about it. They're not the ones backwards engineering this stuff. It's Raytheon and Boeing and Skunk Works and the Anthill and, you know, like all these places.
It's a hard truth for people to recognize, dude, because when we think of this modern day version of a scientist and I'm just hearing Lex Friedman talk to a guy about the history of, like, not the Nazis and science, their relation to science. And I'm thinking about it, like, I'm like, you know, it's so funny how that we've put this golden rule on the idea that a scientist in general is like the ultimately ethical figure. But I got to tell you, folks, the big bombs that are accurately placed through windows from hundreds of miles away are all made by the astrophysics community. They're all made by engineers in rocket engineering. I mean, so it's like, you know, there are things going on in that whole sector that the ultimate alliance between the military complex, astrophysics, and the military is huge. And there are so many layers between that. You can't expect shouting at Congress to somehow remove decades of instilled operating procedures of security, not the knowledge that a lot of these things are probably related to the clandestine field, like the idea that we're not going to be like, we're spying on the Russians from over here. Oh yeah, come on, check us out. We got some pretty cool stuff. No, it's never going to happen. So, like, I joke about it, but, like, when, you know, if you want to chase a mountain lion up a tree, you're just going to die tired. So if you want to chase the secret keepers deeper into their secret caverns and compartmentalized groups, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to better form the tools they need to divert the disclosure and the narrative they want. They're going to get these contingency plans are going to go into place that they've always expected they would have to use one day if anyone ever picked up interest in any meaningful way. And then again, I'm still not even talking about aliens. I'm just talking about UAP, which are birds, balloons, and drones. I'm not
drones, unmanned aerial systems, all that stuff. And that's kind of what they classify everything. Even if they know what it is, it's still kind of a UAP until they, you can look at it and say, oh yeah, it's probably a drone, but it's still got that classification of UAP or UAS or whatever. Yeah.
Don't let anyone fool you for a second. I'm not saying this as an authority, but I'm saying this as a grand harvester of military anecdotes through that field in the Defense Department. I'll tell you right now that no one in the Navy was saying that aliens were the threat to the future integrity of how our battlefield awareness was 10, 15 years ago. It was, how the hell are the Chinese and Russians doing this? They're putting their money into drones that last way longer, drones that are transmedium, hyperbolic drones that pop out of the water in pill-shaped form, drones that literally deteriorate when they fall in salt water. They don't care they can't get them back. Everyone's like, well, how the hell did they get the drones back all the way to their ships? Well, first off, it could be coming from subs. Second off, that they don't care if they get it's sending the information digitally. We live in an age where we don't need a string.
They're expendable. They're expendable.
These and again, like there probably are the observers that I think that are really here, and I really do think that Navy and everyone has best tried to emulate that for 70 years or so. But the UAP problem was not an alien problem. That's clear. I don't know why the sudden shift at the end. Like, well, there's something to do after I'm done with my career in the Pentagon. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I'm telling you, it had no one in the Navy said UAP aliens. They weren't. No one was doing that.
It was some form of adversary tech that we didn't identify or recognize, right?
Yeah.
And because most of it we did, like the imaging systems, the sonar systems, I know are some of our radar technicians and sonar technicians in the subs can identify other subs just by how they sound. Like we know what's going on there, and they've put an extreme amount of science into this over the years since World War II, since the radar boom. Like they really have been trying to figure out what these different signal intelligence, indicators mean and how to identify things. So when they say that they can't identify something, it does make my eyes arch, my eyebrow arch a little bit. And I'm like, really? Why not? Like you said, we should have the best detection systems in the world at that point, and I believe we do. So I tend to think when they say that they can't identify it, it's the same as if I showed them a picture of the X-37B 10 years ago. They'd have been like, we can't identify that. We don't know what that is. That's definitely not ours, but we all know it is, so that's kind of what I think we saw there. I think that was, man, or like you said, it's more of like the, it may have even been a test of our own, plasma holograms or something like that, our own ECCMs that we're working on, like our electronic countermeasures and things like that,
I've gone through basically pretty much everything that has been presented by ATIP or by TSA from the start of them. I didn't mean to confuse them too. I understand that ATIP came way before, but I've went through pretty much everything they've claimed and presented. Even the metallic balloon pictures that they're claiming are being, delivered from pilots, whatever, have a very prosaic answer. And they are also in the UAP category. They involve a lot of ICBM hypersonic testing involves cluster bomblets that are in, and things that distract radar and stuff and IR stuff are in these metallic balloons that fly to 30,000, 40,000 feet. And they're used to distract, they spread over 15 miles. I
can see a use for those, and
they're very clever, very clever.
Yeah, especially if it's some sort of radar reflective material that'll bounce, waves away from the collector. That's the
coolest part about it. That is the coolest part. They literally have put
or absorbing, right?
Yeah, they made it so some of them are in the shape of a cube and a sphere. I wonder why, because it's great for radar. Some of them in metallic balloons have temperature adjusting little sensors in there. They can adjust the temperature in the balloons to really confuse the IR of what's going on here, because of we use ground-based radar, different bands of it, and then we use IR detection from above. And so they've no. I don't want to say it's all a complete conspiracy whatsoever, because I'm sure Lou is he made it. He's making his money right now off the best hits of ATIP, that is, which is the few cases that might have been weird. But
he's making money left and right.
But having said, but all of the other things that has been presented as evidence of these things, like the metallic blimps up in the sky, are very well known in the defense industry. They're known what that's like. It's just taking the layperson and using them as they believe it. Now, why? It's like it's not fair. It's not.
There's always been a push from the intelligence community to spread misinformation into ufology, as we talked about before. We're no stranger to that. But there's also been another push from the intelligence agency to monitor other people's programs through ufology. Because if you think about it, if something, we're going to tell them if something's flying over our airspace. They're going to get it from us. You know, they can get it from us on the ground. They'll get it from a sky watcher. There's an interest in the intelligence community to spy on truly China and Russia, but by using ufology to do it for them. And I think we're seeing some of that push with, remember the app that the TTSA was going to put
The
out?
vault.
Yes.
Sketchy
Yes.
shit was that.
That would have been a perfect thing. They're like, okay, let's get everyone else to, all these people, ufologists, to put these things on their phone and send it into this one location so that we have access to it, you know, and that's great, you know, no big deal, but tell us what we're doing, you know, like don't try to smoke screen us into, manipulate us into doing something when really we're just collecting data for the NSA or the CIA or whoever it is, you know, like,
We know those stories. I mean,
yeah.
the MUFON stories and things like that. There have been large chunks of information that just get gobbled up by a contractor, and we don't know what's going on exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's something to that, and I think that they've always kept their eyes on ufology as a whole. We know, you know, like the aviary. There's been other times people have come in, and you know, I'm learning more and more. Like I just found I think it was a 2005 or so leak. You know, it was this guy. He's like, "Oh, I've got all these insiders," and he wrote this paper about it. And I'm going through the paper, and I'm realizing this is textbook misinformation. There's 10% truth in here about real projects and 90% of bull crap in order to obfuscate and to get our enemies to think that we're working on stuff, so they divert resources trying to figure out what it is and how to do it themselves. And we know this because I could go down the list of these 10 programs that the guy listed, and I know that one of them for a fact was a fraud and the other one for a fact was a truth. You know, and all the rest of them were like, most of those were probably not true and were probably misinfo. But here he is talking about like an earlier version of the X-37A called or the X-37B, which was called the X-33A. And I was like, oh my God, that really was a real program that was leaked, you know, 20 years ago. Why? And then I'm thinking, oh, because that's the one part of the truth with the misinformation that they put out. It's never all fully true or fully a lie. There's always some kind of weird mixture of, you know, some kind of, you know, weird thing that you got to figure it out, you know.
And the worst part is, of course, that they deliver all the wrong. Most times, I feel that all the wrong things are the things that we want to hear in ufology, that we're jumping at because. Okay, you're telling me right now that a guy that's a retired CIA agent that isn't laying on a bed is going around right now saying there's a known hybrid program with aliens out there? I mean, he literally is saying, like, I know it. Like, everyone is just like, it's just crazy. But it's feeding that one major, you know, core thing of us. I don't know. I could go on about that forever. But I have Christian Lambert coming on the program at the end of the month, and you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and you know, if you know the man, you know his ability to lay out what the balance is with the CI community over.
You should ask Christian about Who's Luke, because he was on the Unidentified Celebrity review right after the film came out, and it was still getting a lot of heat at that time. People were really kind of knee-jerking to it, and he was one of the people who said, no, wait a minute, this guy from Portland made a really good film, and there's some good questions in here, but it was just kind of ignored. Yeah, I actually emailed Christian. I don't know if I have his original or his email or not, but yeah, ask him about that. That'd be cool. I'd like to hear his take. It made my day when he said that. I was like, wow, Christian Lambert, really? Are you kidding me? Like, he's sort about, yeah,
absolute legend, and one of the only people that really go around kind of trying to remind people, you know, of what exactly went down, you know, and people just think it's all literally the X-Files did such a great job at kind of erasing that whole entire thing because it was just so fantastical and brought a whole new group of people in there, and they did it for a reason. But I mean, I tell you, man, it's not that I think it's the exact same thing, but gosh dang, seems very familiar.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about basic technology defeating our advanced detection systems. Sixth Sense posted a link to a high altitude balloon that was just drifted over Hawaii. I think that was last month. It wasn't that long ago. And then, you know, there was multiple witnesses saw it. It was a big round balloon, looked like a scientific balloon, maybe an atmospheric balloon of some kind, but it was still pretty low and may or may not have had some kind of sensors on the bottom. But that got past everything that we've got out there. We've got satellites looking at that area. We've got ground-based radar all over the island. You know,
I don't quite know. I use radar quite often. Like literally, I live on a boat. I use radar almost like on a daily basis. I'm not in a boat right now because it's winter, but I don't understand how a sophisticated system like that could miss something so obvious. But I have a suspicion it has to do with the balloon not being inflated all the way from China. Essentially, I think it might inflate right before its usage almost. So I've seen a lot of variants and things, that's the thing I was talking about earlier, but when I was discussing my career, when I was a private, I'll just tell the story. I've told it on my podcast. I don't care. I drove my sergeant major to a tent next to this place called Leshytown in Fort Lewis. And this giant tent is full of these contractors, and they're selling everything from alternative fuels for this and, spray-on solar panel things. They're putting together all these crazy inventions and stuff. And and it just... Hold on a second. I'm sorry. My computer screen just went. What's happening here? Oh boy. I was just gonna. I went to go click an article and I was gonna show up. But when I brought up earlier the war zone about these drones. Sorry, splitting off topic here real quick. But when I'm saying this all the time about the stuff, the primitive tech coming over from China and being able to get by the systems. The U.S. the U.S. Navy has openly talked about developing their own systems to do the very same thing to the Chinese, the very same thing. So this isn't something that we can't all just verify. People out there instantly. I saw it. I had a buddy text me right away and says, "Dude, you're so annoying." Oh crap! Sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry, but about me talking about the damn balloons again. But Can I give you an article real quick if you're not already aware? I'm sure you are. Or maybe you haven't had a chance to see it, but I'll send you an article right now. And literally the title of it is Adversary Drones Are Spying on the U.S. and the Pentagon Acts Like They're UFOs. Published April 15th, 2021. And it took them about 2 years to put this article together. Here it is. I'm sending it to you now in the chat of the thing. That's from Tyler Rogoway at the Drive in the War Zone. And, man, I got to tell you, it paints the picture perfectly. Sorry. I closed the screen mid-talk, and then also I had someone text me that I was being annoying.
This is the article here you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now, if you go through that now as well, there's articles from Tyler Rogoway that show straight up about how we've been working on anti-gravity. So when people say, hey, there are other propulsion systems out there, and all these famous people linked to ufology in a certain way wrote papers on it, they've been working on it since 1955, including Lockheed Martin. They've been working on anti-gravity. The hangars on Wright-Patterson and why they're there. They're there because of trying to work on anti-gravity technology, reducing the mass of something.
Inertial mass reduction, and they claim to have done it in certain ways. Yeah, some of those Salvador Pi patents deal with that actually, which is how I think those play into. This is a great one here. This is the A-12 Ox Cart, right? The predecessor to the SR-71 Blackbird, and this is one of the planes that is. T.D. Barnes worked on out at Area 51 as a radar technician. And this has been declassified, so we can talk about Ox Cart all day long. But it's real interesting because one of the things that TD said that they would do is they would fly this bird over the edge of a known air, radar unit or something where we have some sort of military radar, and they would contact whoever was there and say, "Look, we're going to fly this thing over. We're not telling you what it is.
Show me what you got."
You're not supposed to get anything, but if you do, send it here and keep it under wraps. And so those types of tests are what really got me thinking about the Nimitz. I'm like, because that's really kind of the same thing. Testing it over, like you said, 2004. That material that was on the Nimitz was the best radar that we had to date. That was the high tech fleet. All of that was the best of the best there. So they should have been able to detect that thing. It makes sense that they would test it over that battle group.
It was also close to St. Nicholas Island too, where there's a heck of a lot of testing going on right there.
Is there? Yeah, I didn't notice that part, but I know that area is hot where we stage everything there.
Oh man, there's a ton of testing. ICBM, counter ICBM stuff. They got to launch into the ocean. There's a ton of crazy stuff going on over at St. Nicholas Island. It's a well known, and literally like the merge plot is like right. Oh, look at that cube inside of a sphere. Sorry, you're looking at that right now. You still look,
yeah. There's that drone dropping other drones. It looks like a larger drone.
There's so many. You can't even count the conception or the novel aircraft designs. And just so people don't think that we're just pulling this out of our butts here, Hey, when they needed the A-12 or the SR-71 or whatever, they needed the B-2 Spirit. They put those things together under 4 years, and they did the jobs so marvelously that they made the craft they replaced look ridiculous, like it was terrible. The SR-71, for God's sakes, there was variants of that where the cone turbines blew off the outside as killer drones.
Wow.
That's way back then, and so
They tested an SR-71, I heard too, that had a plasma laser on the front of it to cavitate, but they couldn't put enough shielding in to protect the pilot from the radiation, and then it put them over weight limit. Like they were trying to strip as much every ounce off of this thing, going with lightweight paint, everything. I mean, like you know how important weight is. Yeah, yeah, especially when you're getting something going that fast, it becomes real interesting.
It speaks to the ingenuity of humans that I feel like is so disregarded in the subject, because I totally believe through my experiences that we're being visited, but at the same time, I mean, what they did with the SR-71 is so ridiculously innovative. People are like, well, yeah, but it's not a new propulsion. Actually, it was. It was a completely revolutionary propulsion system and design. And every aircraft to this date goes fast in little spurts. Pew, pew. That's it, because it's all it can afford. It's going to run out of gas. The SR-71 hauled ass, and it did it forever. It would just went and went and went. And that thing was amazing. And those things it's been 60 years, guys.
I know. And think but what do we got now? The unmanned combat aerial weapon systems, the drones that look like small stealth fighters or bombers, we've got some, and a lot of that stuff is now being not even manually piloted. Unfortunately, it's all artificial intelligence, which is where our drone swarms and things like that come in. If we're using production versions of these in our day-to-day military, it's safe to assume that the black budget projects are 20 to 30 years advanced, off the books. Easily. Yeah, if not, exactly. If not way further.
The money. I try to tell people like what it was like in the Army in 2004, because it's so important to look at, hey, just before my time in the service, right? When they were training for like tanks, they didn't have the money to even shoot rounds in training. So they literally, or gas. So they literally had soldiers, these tank guys, driving down the street, walking down the street with their arm out, going, engage, bang, bang. They didn't, and then at around
like role playing,
like 100%. That is how they trained in the United States Army before the war, before Operation Iraqi Freedom. It took off where every company was out to get a bid. Every novel invention. This pen right here launches an IR light that confused, like literally anything. We had freaking devices on our vehicle that shut down cell phones and anyone that walked in the area. Like lots of
I've heard of those jammers or suppression.
Yeah, we call it the Warlock system. Warlock system.
Yeah, the Portland police has one for riots now. They can just pop in there and
isn't that's a great example though? What is that? Because that's what we see in these private industry eventually leaks out this tech in certain ways. Like, do you think no one invented that plasma blob to talk to hostage rescue team? Like, no. That was invented for other things, clearly, and it found its way up to civilians eventually. So it's like,
like you said, it was an ECCM. It was probably mounted on airplanes to fool ground troops and radar units. If you could just have a plasma hologram and it looks like a real plane to all intents and purposes, including the naked eye, you're way ahead of the game. Oh my God!
All your systems are fooled, and you can't target it. Hey, is it actively jamming, or you just can't target it? Like they said.
No, and I hate to say this, but that gets really into the scary territory of the false flag alien attack, because people could reveal technology like that, and we would think it would be aliens or something like that because it's so far advanced of what the public has seen. But I think we all know that that's out there. I mean, we remember hearing, presidents over the years have said things like shock and awe and, if we have to open the can, you know what I mean? Like they're alluding that we have this crazy, crazy tech that, and I believe them when they say that. I believe that our defense industry has that. And that's kind of what I'm worried about this disclosure push, is that it is just a way to, ramp or to get that stuff out in a quick way, instead of disseminating it slowly, or maybe the altruistic technology first. Instead, we're going to get the propulsion and the weapons tech first. And, that's not necessarily what's best for the whole world.
Yes, just certainly not. And I think we should all be able to question it. I mean, this is the first time I'm laughing with like these elderly ufologists about it. Like I'm like, dude, this is the first time the ufology community is literally cheering a defense spending plan. That is so in contrast to what was ufology for so many years. It's like, how could this be? And
we've
these
gone and boop, we're getting flipped
yeah,
right up on our heads, man. And it didn't take long. It was only a few years for this to happen. It's all been in 4 or 5 years, and it mainly since 2020. Really, it was really when Elizondo and Mellon left TTSA. Then they came onto Twitter and started changing things around a little bit. And,
yeah,
and but you know how it is. Like I said earlier, the plan will shift every 2 years depending on how the elections go.
yeah. And
Yeah.
there's just a long history of it. I want people that are watching this and listening to this to know that to do your research, do your due diligence, go out there and look at the history of the field and figure out from more, credible people than I of what's reasonable or not. And you can see that not only have they used psyops in very real ways that that they've used such bold psyops, it's not even funny. Like ones that are so ridiculously not going to work, but yet they tried them anyways. Like I was involved with one. I talk about hearts and minds. That
Mm-hmm.
was someone thought that was going to work. Some moron came up with the idea hey, you know what? You know how you just busted in there and shot up the place and arrested the uncle and they got rid of the terrorists and did a place. I want you to go back over there on Wednesday and give us some Marvel action figures. See if you can win the hearts of the children. It's like so idiotic. You don't think they'd lie about narrative when it comes to UAP?
Of course, they lie about everything. Everything to them
Jesus
is
Christ.
about, yeah, it's about manipulation, public image, and I say this all the time that our government, as far as this stuff goes, treats you and me, civilians, like the enemy because any
Oh, I
any
have to.
information
Yeah.
that we get, yeah, it goes right to China, it goes right to the Kremlin, it goes right to the FSB, it goes right to the Mossad, it goes right to everybody. The whole world gets it as soon as we get it. That's what it
Yeah.
means to live in a free democracy,
Yep.
and
Exactly.
and so like I don't harsh on them for that. I'm like I expect them to lie to me because of that, and that's why when they say things like Elizondo comes out, he's like I'm gonna whistleblow and all that. I'm just like, you're not a whistleblower, man. You mentioned that earlier. He's no Snowden. He's not living in embassies and fleeing the country with his, lucky to be intact. The guy's gallivanting around, to GQ Heroes, and then
Fully
he goes
employed.
to the,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the next week he's up on the Hill lobbying, even though he's not a registered lobbyist, to the best of my knowledge, and then he's at conventions the next time, and then he's on Jimmy Church Fade to Black the next day, so he's not in hiding. He's not running. He's not in prison like Manning was. He's not on the run like Snowden is. He's no whistleblower. He has, for Christ's sake, he still has security clearance.
Yeah, that's why that whole thing just instantly hit me in the gut shot. Because I'm not gonna lie. At 2017, I had this feeling like finally, I tried to show people the paper and stuff. Finally, and then it slowly started occurring to me when I heard things like, there's a lot of envy and people in the military hate each other. We're not all brothers and sisters. Anyone who says that is ridiculous. Like when I see that they're like Fravor and Dietrich's U.S. patriots that protected L.A. or something on 9/11, I'm like, dude, can we diminish the term hero and warrior anymore? It's like I know guys that didn't make it back from combat. They didn't fly around in a patrol with a jet, and they're getting so like. Who's more I don't like that we've just used this whole idea and degraded it so bad that he's a good guy. He was on the good guy team. Don't you hear what he's saying is good? What's wrong with you? Like that's the entire public's reaction towards it. It's
Right.
crazy. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm ranting away about it.
No, that's good because that talks about the divisiveness and the labeling that we spoke about earlier. Like you said, if he's good, that implies that anyone who's against him is bad. And that's not the truth. Critics in America, you should be able to face your critics. If your morals and your standards and your story holds up, you should be able to face them. And logical, critical thinking people are going to see what's going on there. But we've been over the last 10 years or 12 years, it's like conditioned just to push each other to the side, label people who don't agree with you, tag them this, that, or the other, whether it's in politics or in ufology or, just in life, they're like, oh, you're one of those guys. You know how many people look down on me because I'm from Portland, Oregon? They're like, oh, you must be this hardcore lefty. And I'm like, not really. I'm just kind of my own dude. I grew up in Portland and I love this town and I have some kind of hippie ideals. That's cool. Like one world, one people. But other than that, I don't really, I don't, you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not real
totally
big on
do.
labeling people and stuff. And that's what they're trying to get us to do all the time.
And with every subject of nature, it's just a new way to. There's conspiracies behind that. That's a cognitive dissonance thing for sure. There's like the whole like there's too much of it. I see it in so many elements of life. It's not even funny. It's almost sickening. It actually has drained my soul for just living in the last 2 years, trying to be like, but yesterday they said this on the news, and just and like no one is like, we don't care, we're just going along to get along, and it's real rough, especially in ufology when you see that. That's why I oftentimes think that things like UFOs and what they are is not subjective, and I know it's kind of. Actually, maybe I'm not even saying that right, but it's not very subjective at all. Because if you don't know better, you will just listen to the people out there that eventually get turned out to be charlatans. We find out later on. And you could think that is the most credible, most credentialed person. So based on my knowledge of what I've researched, I think this. It's not how it works, everyone. It's really not how ufology ultimately works. It's based upon investigating and researching what's in the documents and all that stuff. And even if, we could break it down more than that, but don't take anyone at face value. Mm-mm. What is with the want and need to read? It's like everything's a headline. Not everything is a thesis statement, folks. Not everything is like this one thing. I don't know. We really gotta scale back and go to how they did it back in the day. Maybe we should all put on raincoats and put on like po' boys and start going around.
Back to basics. Back to basics ufology,
Yeah.
And that's true. A lot of people have said, hey, do you trust Lou? And I say, I trust the evidence. And I think that's what we need to get back to is looking at evidence, getting away from the feelings, getting away from the emotions, good and bad, and I've never quite got the emotional attachment that people have to this character, like I've never felt an attachment to a celebrity of any kind. And I've met quite a few in my day. They're normal people, they all, some are more successful and yeah, right. Like it's not, they don't walk on water and shoot lightning bolts out of their eyes. They're people. So you just got to keep that in mind. And even Lou is too, like if you see his Twitter interactions with me last night, he lost his temper, and it's good to see that because it's something real from the guy for once, instead of 4 years of, I'm Mr. Nice Guy, can do no wrong. Everyone's got an opinion except for the ones I ignore. Everyone's opinion matters except for the ones I ignore. Well, yeah, he showed some true colors last night, and I think that's good for once. At least he's being real. Maybe he'll sit down and talk with me and we'll watch the film together that I made and he can tell me what he thinks, about it. I'm sure it'll be some colorful conversation, but we still like to have it.
Chance, sir.
Yeah. I don't think so.
It ain't ever gonna happen, man. That would be against the operation, if you will.
Well, I think this is just going to keep growing until he does. That's why I think someday he will ask me to come and be on my show. Yeah, I think so.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I think it's going to stay positive for sure, but especially when it comes to a topic that can drive you crazy in a matter of moments. But
yeah. Somebody said that earlier. They're new to this subject, but they're just like, "What is going on, man?" Like, you got your head spinning one way and then the other way when you talk to somebody else, but. Yeah.
There's I wanted to just someone had posted this and I saw the reminder for it earlier and I was just gonna bring it up. And if anyone out there can do this research for me and get back to me, you can get me at strangerecon@gmail.com. Did you see that Lou's interview with UFO Joe this weekend? And I am absolutely not watching any more of UFO Joe stuff. I feel bad for my audience. I even had him on my show. UFO Joe this weekend where he says he never see a picture of or video where he could see occupants in a craft. But earlier in the fall, when he interviewed somewhere, he claimed he
theories of everything.
Theories of everything. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, early on theories. So is that a thing that people have noticed already? Because I didn't pick it up. Yes. I didn't notice it.
I didn't watch that. I watched a little bit of that broadcast, but I'm not a big fan of Elizondo or UFO Joe, so I didn't pick up on that part. But I saw the tweets that people were making about it, and I did see the one where he had talked about seeing on theories of everything before. So it does sound like there's another direct contradiction there because he said one thing one time about seeing occupants in the craft, and then here recently he's saying no, there were no occupants in the craft, or he couldn't tell, or something like that.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a pretty big deal.
Well, yeah, if he's directly contradicting himself, but again, I showed in my film many direct contradictions too. So it's just like, how often are people going to take these things before they don't? They realize that the guy's just saying two different things. But I'm trying to find that tweet if I can, but I don't want to go on Twitter right now because it just it drags you in.
I literally only go there to post it. And like I was saying about UFO Joe, hey, I'm gonna say this right out there to everyone, and even him, he'll listen himself. I'm sure he watches your channel, even he pretends he wouldn't. But I had respect for this guy, and I've been reading his articles on his website for a while, just casually going in there. I joined Twitter and almost freaking vomited. Like anyone who talks this way to people for just providing a theory and a cameraman from reality TV is going to tell someone that anyone who thinks this way is an idiot, a moron, lost, crackhead, you know, whatever the hell he's saying. It's like, dude, get a freaking grip, man. You don't know shit about psyops. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, you've never enforced the psyop before. Being a part of that hearts and mind thing was like, all I thought the entire time was, oh my God, could you imagine being the one that gets to decide what a psyop? You literally, if they're doing this, what else are they doing? Like, it's so crazy. You know, you're not going to tell me, sir. I've been creating extremely biased opinions about what's going on, and openly, I'll admit that, since I was a child, because that's how early the government effery has been involved in my life, and even including after the army. So, you know, so I'm still fighting with the army over goddamn my service, for Christ's sakes. It's been like 15 years, for Christ's sakes, and I still can't get them to fix things in my own service record. It's insane, and so I don't know.
Yeah, the bureaucracy is great, isn't it? You know, and the levels that they go to for the different types of, for lack of a better word, propaganda, you know, the different psyops and things, man, is amazing, because it's not just the straight up intelligence community. Like you said, it bleeds over into the private sector. And then there's also people like UFO Joe who just grab it and run with it because it's the thing of the day, you know, or whatever. Like, and so you've got all these private people who are buying into it and perpetuating it as well. And you got to look at every different little player in the game and say, why is this person repeating it? Why is that person? Or just say, I don't even care. I don't even listen to UFO Joe because he's just kind of an echo of Lou, and I go to Lou. Why would I get Joe's take on what Lou's saying? I want my take on what Lou's saying, you know. But that's my feeling about all news. You know, I'll start out with an article, and then I'll go and I'll research it, because I know that everyone's got a spin on it nowadays. You know, the trust of the mainstream media is at an all-time low as far as my lifetime and perspective.
Oh my God. It's basically, you know, complete out of context nonsense over and over and over again. Like, I don't want to say any trigger words that might get your channeling attention, but literally
Thanks.
Everything from the UAP community, but literally to everything you've been told about recent facts the last couple of years about what's happening in our society has been
everything.
Let's just skew it the best way to make every dollar we can, and then just panic people to death. And
it was so weird. Like, we were all watching what was going on, you know, between Russia and Ukraine recently. And, you know, like, I was watching the media at first, but then I was like, wait a minute. I go out to Twitter, and there's a guy on Twitter who's got 1,800 images from people in the region who are taking pictures on their phone and sending them into him, and he's cataloging them all. I'm like, I'm going there for my information, because that's boots on the ground reporting without bias and just raw facts. And I followed that for a good month before things were happening. And I feel like the things that our analysts and pundits all said surprised them was not very surprising to me, an amateur, because I was watching what was going on. And I was like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. You know, I didn't say it publicly because I don't really like to talk about politics publicly, but I was watching it like everybody else was. And I wasn't shocked by what happened. You know, I was just like, well, you know, I was surprised at the resistance, though. I was just like, if they make it 24 hours, they got a good chance, man. Like, every day their odds get better, you know, like, hang in there. But you never know what's going to happen. I mean, geopolitics are weird, and, you know, things are crossing. It all muddles up now with the mainstream. It's all about clicks for profit, but
it's gone a little wild. Yeah. So it's important that everyone kind of take a look at, you know, and use the proper words when asking the questions, because if you use the wrong word, like the difference between prevention and treatment, or invasion and, you know, an incursion or whatever, you know, occupation, you'll suddenly recognize the difference between the stories being told to you and the actual results there. And it's the cause, not the effect, we want to care about here in ufology. So chase the cause. Let's
Yeah. And you're right, terminology is important. You know, like, I made the mistake once of saying that we went to war in Afghanistan, and I realized we never declared war on Afghanistan. We occupied them for 18, 20 years, but we were never technically at war with them. And that's a big no-no. It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I thought we were at war, and if we weren't, what the heck were we doing there for 20 years?
I know, man. It's just how we play the thing now. Everyone's, you know, the story. It's just so crazy, though, that literally I never thought we'd get to the point where the news kept down that path. I thought they would break down at one point with the amount of redactions they skipped, but they just kept. Now I caught a glimpse the other day for the first time in a while of the mainstream media. The dude actually looked like, you know, when they were like show the future in like a movie or something, and like the guy's like his hair looks plastic. His freaking suit, it looks like it could fall off him. It's all starch. And like, and that's just what's being, it's just.
We're not that far from the AI announcers that are just like, terror 24/7, you know, and
Oh my
they
God.
look like these weird androgynous people that's like a mix of every face or something that's like psychologically meant to endear you to them, you know. We're not that far off, but it looks like we're just over the 2 hour mark, so this might be a good time to kind of wrap things up. Did you have anything else that we didn't ask about or get to before we get to the audience and see if they got any questions?
There's a series of things out there that, of course, Luis said that we didn't talk about or whatnot. And, you know, you just can't really. I mean, your film did a great job at all that, but just remember that if you were to hire an expert to go speak at your event and he was off script within seconds, you would be like, I wasted my money. And so we're 5 years into this, and we've gone so far off the script from what ATIP did that we're literally answering questions like, our giants. Never, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, no, I get where you're going with that.
No.
It gets into some strange territory.
Like, my job was to investigate UAPs. Sir, what do you think the transmedium conjunction between the consciousness and the soul is when it comes to where, you know, it's like, why are we going to this man pretending that his word is divine? Mm-hmm. There is no, whatever. I'm sorry. I can go on.
Because he's become the figurehead of ufology for a certain group of people, you know, like he's just all truth. So that's what we're trying to get out there, get to the truth. But yeah, if any of the chat, if you guys got any questions, there you go. Pop them all up in big capital letters so we can see them. Or if you've got any comments, do that as well. Jeff has been joining me here today from Strange Recon. His link to his channel is down in the description below. So go over and give his stuff a watch and check out his podcast too. Let's see if there was any questions here.
Seems like chat. No one wants to listen to me talk anymore.
And that's your, let me put that in here too.
That's just a link tree to a bunch of crap I got going on.
Is that that's your link tree, like all your different stuff? I'll put that in the chat too. And I will put that into the description as well. So
I don't have a very active YouTube channel, so if you guys would like to go sub over there, that'd be great. It's you know, it's trailing behind quite significantly. So, but thank you, I appreciate the ones that already did sub. I just checked. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we can get you some help on your YouTube channel. I'll catch it up to your podcasting stuff. People go like and subscribe to his channel.
And can I just say one more time for this? This sounds going to sound ridiculous, but I respect Lou for his job working for the government, protecting us against possible foreign threats. Do not use what I said or what Manny said today is your authority to go off and freaking burn someone's house down or something crazy, for Christ's sake.
Oh,
no, yeah. You should hear the crap people say on both sides. I'm sure you see it all the time. Of course, you're the man. You made the documentary, but it's like, dude, I'm just talking. We're just observing things. I'm not trying to militarize anyone.
No, not in any way, shape, or form.
Weaponize your curiosity.
You know, and I do say people, and I do tell people sometimes, I'm like, put some pressure on Lou, and I'm very clear. What I mean is to tweet at him to speak with me, not to go over and, you know, yell at him. I'm like, hey, if you see me making a tweet that says who's Lou and I want to interview Lou, then retweet the thing. You know, we're not trying to agitate or incite anybody here. We're just trying to get some answers to these questions that have been ignored for years. I mean, and a lot of them have been. They've just been piling up and piling up. So that's where we're at now. Nobody's trying to, you know, I don't wish Mr. Elizondo any harm. I can't say that he doesn't wish me any harm. It sounds like he's pretty aggressive towards me, but, you know, that's probably just him being upset. I don't take any of that to heart. I'm sure if I were to meet with the man, he wouldn't, you know, try to rip my head off or anything. I'm sure we just talk, and probably it might get heated or be passionate, but it would be a good conversation at some point. So hopefully we get there. I see Unidentified S4s here. You had a great show the other day where you had Michael Schratt and Jim Goodall on there, and they talked about some really cool stuff. So if you guys haven't seen that, go check that out. This is Andy Gambino's his co-producer over there. We call him the Andy Gambino, the what is his name? The UK Guido. These two have a great chemistry, man. You guys should check out Unidentified S4. Check out Strange Recon. Keep coming around Area 503. Jeff, I think we're going to get out of here, but I will have you back on here anytime. And if you want me to come over on your show to talk about stuff, hit me up, man. I enjoy talking with you. We have a good conversation here, and things just move along great. It almost doesn't even feel like 2 hours.
Yeah, went right by. And no one's going to tell me at Strange Recon who I'm allowed to talk to, you bunch of freaking weirdos. All right, lay off the censorship, everyone.
Yeah, anyways. For real. What we can get both sides of the story. We're discerning adults here. We can figure it all out, you know, and we have been. So I agree with you too. Nobody tells me who I can talk to or who I can't talk to. All right. The second they start paying my bills, maybe we can converse about that subject.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, I'm going to kick you to the back, Jeff. Thanks for coming again.
Thank you, everyone. Take it easy.
All right, folks. So that's about all I got for you today. I didn't see any extra questions there from anybody, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap things up and get out of here. This has been Manny at Area 503. And, oh, what's this? I got a little special for y'all. I think Andy's going to like this one. He likes a good edit. Peace out, folks. I'll catch y'all later. Make sure to like, sub, share, spread the word. Tell everyone you know that Area 503 is the best. And if you haven't seen Who's Lou yet, go ahead and watch it on who'sloumovie.com or on my YouTube channel. The link is in the description. Have a great night, everybody. Oops.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.